Chapter 552. The ferocious beasts in the Star-Do Great Forest were, of course, Tion and the rest. When Lin Feng broke through to a million-year soul ring, they were awakened once. However, they didn't pay much attention to it and quickly went back to sleep. Previously, when Douluo and Shui descended to the lower realm, when the world wall was opened, they were also awakened once. However, like before, they didn't pay much attention to it and quickly went back to sleep. However, after that, Douluo and Shui started a search around the Douluo continent. Their spiritual power spread out, and these sleeping soul beasts all became nervous. After all, although the world wall had been shaken a few times in the past countless years, there had never been a situation where gods were searching the continent. Although these soul beasts were strong, they were still nothing compared to gods from the god realm. Unless their master, who was even deeper, woke up. However, their master was severely injured. Even if he forcefully woke up, he wouldn't be too strong. It would be difficult for him to resist someone from the god realm. The most important thing was that the soul beasts were too weak now. They needed to recuperate and didn't dare to show their faces. In the end, after knowing what Douluo and Shui were doing, Tion ordered all the soul beasts to gather together and set up a concealment formation to hide. Actually, the place where they were sleeping had a seal. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't be discovered. However, to be on the safe side, they added an additional layer of concealment formation. Just like that, they were lucky. Shui and Douluo didn't discover this group of strong soul beasts. Because of this sudden situation, Tion and the rest had already woken up from their deep sleep. They had been sleeping for too long and didn't know anything about the outside world. When they realized that Douluo and Shui had returned to the god realm, they decided to go out and investigate the situation. After all, it was too abnormal for gods to descend to the lower realm to search. They reckoned that something big had happened on the continent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted so strangely. Tion and the group of ferocious beasts had thought of all these when they were hiding. Now, Tion had gathered all the ferocious beasts in the concealment formation. They used their soul power and transformed into human forms. It was similar to Daming's transformation back then. This human form wasn't a real human. It was just a transformation technique. As the leader of the Black Dragons, Tion was also dressed in black in his human form. His eyes flickered with a dark purple light, and he looked very evil. The others were also dressed in strange clothes, which gave them a sense of antiquity. After all, their perception of the Douluo continent was still at that of tens of thousands of years ago, so it was normal for them to dress very differently. Everyone, Tion said in a deep voice, that person from the god realm is patrolling the continent is really strange. There might be some changes in the outside world that we don't know about. So in order to investigate the situation of the continent, we have to send someone out and bring back the current situation of the continent. Otherwise, the god realm and demons, and clans, previously, the gods had just descended to the mortal world. For the sake of safety, they could not all go out. That would be too dangerous, whereas continents. Course people TS? Is there anyone who wants to go? Tion looked at everyone and asked. As the backbone of these people, and in addition to the fact that he had to protect his lord, he couldn't take the risk. He could only send others. At this moment, there were 6 other ferocious beasts besides the Golden Eyes Black Dragon King and the beast god Tion. The first was called by G. She was an emerald swan and had a strength of 500,000 years. This kind of soul beast was very special. They had strong recovery abilities. They were like healing-type soul masters. If they fought, they would be heavily protected. The second was called the Myriad Demon King. He was a demonic eye tree. He was a very special plant-type soul beast. He also had a strength of 500,000 years. As a plant-type soul beast, his body was huge. His roots covered half of the Star-Do Great Forest. His life force was also very strong. It was very difficult to kill him. The third was called the Bear Lord. His name was Dark Golden Terraclaw Bear. He had a strength of 400,000 years and was very strong. As he had some behemoth bloodline, his strength was even higher when he went crazy in battle. The fourth was called the Scarlet King. He was a three-headed scarlet devil mastiff. He had a strength of 300,000 years and was good with fire. His hellfire was not inferior to Ma Hongjuan's phoenix fire. The fifth was called ZG. She was a demonic infernal dragon king. Although she only had a strength of 200,000 years, she was very strong because of her dragon bloodline. The sixth was called the demon spirit. He was very mysterious. He had always maintained his human form and had never revealed his true form. Other than Tian, no one knew what his true form was. As for the demon spirit, he was also 200,000 years. However, because he didn't fight much, no one knew his true fighting strength. When the six of them heard Tian's words, they became very excited. Bai Ji didn't say anything. She was a very quiet person. She just waited quietly. Going out this time was a dangerous thing. If no one was willing to take the initiative, she could go out for a while. After all, her true form was very special. It was better for her to hide in the human world. As for the Myriad Demon King, he wasn't worried at all. Because he was a plant-type soul beast, he couldn't move his true form. More importantly, he was everyone's eyes in the forest. He was the one who discovered Bai Shui and Bai Luo's spiritual power and told Tian about it. Therefore, such an important person like him would not be sent out. The Bear Lord was next. He had a fiery temper and was very straightforward. He said, "Who wants to go out? There might be people from the God realm fishing outside. If we go out, we'll be discovered." After that, he added, "If we're not careful, those fellows might follow the clues and find our base. Master will be in danger." Although the Bear Lord's words were unpleasant, they were exactly what Tian was worried about. These savage beasts were the last few powerful soul beasts. Their purpose was to protect their master and let him recover his strength. Then, he would lead them back to the God realm. The reason why they were in hibernation was to avoid being discovered, especially by the powerful soul beasts from the God realm. If they went out now, they would be taking a huge risk. After hearing the Bear Lord's words, the Scarlet King, ZG, and Yao Ling didn't say anything. They waited quietly. They didn't want to go out because they had a chance of losing their lives. After all, they hadn't been discovered yet. Their master didn't give them any instructions. If they risked their lives to explore, it wouldn't be right. Everyone wanted to live until their master led them back to the God realm. Tian's eyes focused. Although it's dangerous now, we've been in hibernation for too long. We don't know anything about the outside world. If we don't investigate properly, we might be in even more danger. The unknown was always terrifying. Tian and the others knew very little about the outside world. Right now, they were very nervous. "I think it won't be too late to go out after a while," the Myriad Demon King muttered. His main body covered almost the entire core region of the Great Douluo forest, and very few soul masters set foot in this region. If he needed to investigate the situation in the outside world, he could try to spread out a little and see if he could obtain any information from the mouths of soul masters. However, this method was very dangerous. If there were people from the God realm waiting outside, his main body might be discovered once he went out. "No," Tian shook his head. "The continent has changed beyond our expectations. In less than 10 years, we've been awakened twice. If we continue to sit here and wait, it'll be too dangerous. We have to go out and investigate the situation." As he spoke, Tian seemed to have thought of something. He said, "Right, I seem to have sensed a special aura. 100,000 years soul beast broke through. Even with his 800,000 years of cultivation, he could only vaguely sense this ripple. It was a ripple in his bloodline. It was very weak. If not for Tian's sharp senses, he would have thought that he had sensed wrongly." "What? Another soul beast has appeared?" the Myriad Demon King exclaimed in shock. Everyone else had the same expression on their faces. They knew that the 100,000-year soul beast that Tian was talking about was the birth of a savage beast. The meaning of a savage beast was very simple. It meant that a 100,000-year soul beast that had survived the calamity had broken through to 200,000 years and had the ability to transform. This was also the foundation of soul beasts. It was the kind that Tian and the others approved of. It had to be known that a savage beast hadn't been born on the Douluo continent for tens of thousands of years. The sudden birth of a savage beast was too shocking. I only sensed it. I don't know the exact situation. Tion furrowed his brows. The ripple in his bloodline was actually referring to Daming. Daming had a portion of the dragon's bloodline. This was why Tion could use it as a link to break through Lin Feng's Thousand Trickster Ruler's seal and sense his aura. Originally, Daming would have been attracted to the great star Do forest by his bloodline, and he would have been unable to stop himself from rushing into the forest. Tion also knew this. This was why he didn't go out to search for Hua Yu Hao. He chose to continue sleeping. He thought that Daming would come looking for him soon. When that happened, they would hold a grand welcoming ceremony for him. However, because the soul power that Daming absorbed contained a lot of Lin Feng's aura, Daming's ability to sense his bloodline was very weak. It was the kind that could be ignored at any time. This feeling was like the nose in one's eyes. In fact, one's eyes could always see the nose, but one would subconsciously ignore it. In addition to the establishment of the Great Xia Empire, Daming was given many tasks. When he was busy, he forgot about his bloodline. "How long ago did you sense it?" Bai Ji asked. "About a year." Tion was a little uncertain as he replied. "That shouldn't be the case. Master is the ancestor of all soul beasts. If someone really appeared, he should have been attracted." The Myriad Demon King said doubtfully. "With the attraction of the bloodline, not to mention a year, the ferocious beast should come over in a day at most." However, after a year without any news, they were starting to doubt Tion's words. In fact, Tion was also a little doubtful. Did he sense wrongly? Otherwise, why didn't he come after so long? However, Tion quickly realized that it wasn't the time to talk about this. They should be discussing the matter of going out to investigate. As he thought about this, Tion coughed and said, "This matter is still a mystery. In addition to the changes in the continent in recent years, we urgently need someone to go out and understand the situation." After hearing this, everyone who was discussing their own race quietened down. They looked at each other, but didn't say anything. They knew that they should send someone out to investigate, especially about their own race. Otherwise, they would be too nervous about the unknown outside. However, they all hoped that the person who went out wasn't them. After all, this matter was too dangerous. Only a fool would take the initiative to go out. At this moment, the few of them looked at each other awkwardly. Tion sighed softly when he saw this. He was prepared to persuade them again. At this moment, Bai Ji said, "I'll go." "Sister Bai Ji, how can you go? This matter isn't up to you." The Myriad Demon King immediately tried to persuade her. The Bear Lord also said, "Yes, this matter isn't up to you. You have to choose between us." That's right. You can choose between the few of us." For a time, everyone tried to dissuade him. However, only they themselves knew how many of those who said those words were sincere. "Everyone, you don't have to persuade me." Bai Ji shook her head and said, "My abilities are a little special. They're very good at hiding. Even if someone from the God Realm comes, there's a high chance that I won't be discovered. Therefore, I'm the most suitable person to go out." Bai Ji wasn't spouting nonsense. Her soul power was a little special. Apart from being able to heal, it was also very good at hiding. Therefore, it was the safest for her to go out and investigate. After she finished speaking, everyone was still trying to persuade her. However, Tion saw everyone's expressions in his heart. There weren't many who were trying to persuade her. Although Bai Ji's abilities were very important to them, they could only send her out in such a situation. As he thought about it, Tion sighed and said, "Let's go with Bai Ji. Her abilities are a little special. She's very good at protecting herself. She's the most suitable person." After he finished speaking, he instructed Bai Ji, "Go out and investigate. Be careful. Come back immediately if there's a situation. Don't fight with anyone. Try your best to hide yourself." After hearing this, everyone else except Bai Ji heaved a sigh of relief. After all, this matter had finally come to an end. They were safe. On the other hand, Bai Ji nodded and said, "Yes, I'll be back very soon." After she finished speaking, Bai Ji didn't stay for long. She quickly walked out. Behind her, everyone sent her off. Chapter 553. Bicky obviously knew that the outside world was very dangerous, but her going out was the best decision. The main reason was that her ability was rather special, and her concealment ability was also the best. At the same time, she wasn't weak either. Even if she really met someone from the God Realm, she still had a chance to escape. Therefore, she chose to stand out at this moment. Of course, it was impossible to say that she wasn't disappointed in the Bear Lord and the others. After all, they were all too cowardly. Although surviving to the end and attacking the God Realm with their master was their greatest wish, going out to investigate the situation was also working hard for their great cause. Although Bicky was ridiculing them in her heart, she was still very serious about the upcoming mission. After all, the outside world had definitely undergone a huge change, and she had to figure out. Thinking about this, Bicky gradually left the core region of Douluo Great Forest and slowly walked towards the outside. Because she was afraid of an ambush, she walked very carefully. She walked out bit by bit, and even her spiritual power didn't dare to extend too far. Just like this, she spent half a day before arriving at the outer region of Douluo Great Forest. Along the way, she actually didn't see a single human. This situation made her even more certain that there was a huge change in the continent. After all, in their impression, no matter when, there should be many soul masters hunting soul beasts in Douluo Great Forest. But now, not a single human had come. With caution, Bicky left Douluo Great Forest and continued to rush towards the human kingdom. Previously, when she was in Douluo Great Forest, she carefully checked the surroundings and didn't find any traces of an ambush. It seemed that their hiding place in Douluo Great Forest hadn't been discovered yet. In this case, Bicky only needed to take a walk around the human world and investigate the recent changes. Because she wasn't as nervous as before, Bicky was very relaxed now. She carefully walked around the nearby town. After obtaining some information, she directly rushed towards Great Xia City. At this moment, Bicky was extremely shocked. In just a short month, the powers of the continent had been reshuffled. The Great Xia Empire had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed the two empires, including the Martial Soul Hall. Especially yesterday, the God Realm had actually sent a divine envoy to discuss the matter of cooperation with the Great Xia Empire. The most important thing was that this cooperation was a success. But how is this possible? These words sounded too dreamy, as if they were made up. However, Bicky knew that this was the truth. No one was lying to her. As a 500,000-year soul beast, she could tell if a normal person was lying. It was also because of this that she was extremely curious about the Great Xia Empire. What was the reason for the Great Xia Empire to be able to sweep through the entire continent in just a short month? And why would the God Realm send people to cooperate with the Great Xia Empire? Bicky needed to find out the reason why the people from the God Realm would investigate the continent. Just like that, Bicky started walking towards Grand Xia City. Along the way, she even changed her appearance to make it more suitable for this world. It had to be said that Bicky in her human form was extremely beautiful. She had a head full of jade-colored hair. Not only was her hair silky smooth, but it also exuded a sense of lush vitality. Coupled with her beautiful face and jade-green eyes, she was simply a masterpiece of the Creator. Below, a pair of soft breasts stood out, forming a sharp contrast with her slim waist. Her perfect figure, coupled with her slender thighs, made people unable to take their eyes off her. In fact, it wasn't just Bicky. As long as it was a soul beast in human form, they were generally extremely good-looking. Xiao was like that, Bicky was like that, and even Daming was extremely handsome. Of course, after a soul master reached the level of a titled Douluo, he could also change his appearance, and his look were also extremely good. However, due to their age and mentality, they would basically maintain the appearance of soul Douluo. Very few people would recover their youthful appearance. Bicky knew that her appearance would bring her trouble. Previously, when she was in the small town, she was hit on quite a few times. After leaving the town, she specially covered her face with a veil. Just as Bicky was walking towards Great Xia City was extremely lively at this moment. After all, the divine envoy had just visited this place. Countless people were heading towards Great Xia City to satisfy their curiosity. The flow of people was very terrifying. There were roughly more than 3 million people. There were all kinds of people. Some were purely here to see the world, while others were here to buy goods. In any case, it was very lively. If it was an ordinary city, or even the capital of the two empires, they would definitely be caught off guard by the sudden influx of so many people. However, it wasn't a problem for Great Xia City at all. When Lin Feng first built this city, he planned to have 5 million permanent residents and 10 million transient residents. Although the current permanent population was only 1 million, the number of people employed in every industry, especially in the field of safety management, was set at 2 million. Now that there were 3 million people, although it was a little crowded, it was far from the limit of Great Xia City. It was just a little noisy. Later on, under the powerful mobilization ability of Ning, Fengji, and Tang San, the Great Xia Empire was still a little chaotic in the morning, but it was completely settled in the afternoon. However, this had little to do with Lin Feng. At this moment, he was studying the divine power bottle. To be precise, he was studying the divine power in the bottle. As for the bottle itself, Lin Feng's level was not high enough. He only recorded the surface and needed to study more in depth in the future. As for the divine power, that was what he was mainly studying at the moment. In fact, before this, Lin Feng had also studied the divine power of the sea god. However, there was too little of it. He didn't dare to waste it too much. At that time, he thought that he would use it to condense a god's position. Therefore, he hadn't studied the divine power too much all this time. Now that he had faith points and enough divine power to raise 10 people to level 100, he suddenly became arrogant. This didn't mean that Lin Feng was arrogant. It was just that when he had a lot of divine power, he didn't need to be too frugal when conducting experiments. Just like that, after a day of experiments, Lin Feng had a certain understanding of the divine power. However, the essence of this thing was far beyond soul power. Lin Feng's current research thinking was still based on the method of studying soul power. This way, the efficiency was relatively low. However, this couldn't be helped. Lin Feng's strength was still a little lacking and couldn't produce results quickly. Just like that, Lin Feng spent most of the day studying the divine power and put it aside for the time being. Now, he still needed to continue the 2 studies he had done before. These results were also very important and had to be paid attention to. As for the cooperation with the heavenly realm, he wasn't in a hurry at all. After all, a day in the heavenly realm was a year in the underground. Even if he spent a little more time, it wouldn't have much of an impact. During this period, he needed to increase his strength to a limit. Only then would he have greater confidence to deal with anything that happened in the heavenly realm. Another day has passed. It's time to collect today's experimental data. Lin Feng thought to himself as he walked towards the experimental area. After conducting experiments on those experimental subjects, Lin Feng would collect their data every night. Today, he was doing the same thing. However, Lin Feng suddenly frowned and looked towards the east. That was the commercial district of Great Xia City. If he were to look in the general direction, it would be the direction of the Douluo Great Forest. The reason why Lin Feng thought of the Douluo Great Forest was very simple. He felt the pressure of an unfamiliar expert. Most importantly, that expert had a trace of the aura of a soul beast. In order to maintain the stability of Great Xia City, Lin Feng placed small clones in many places in the city. It could be a street lamp, a landscape tree, or even a rock. These things could be Lin Feng's clones. Although they weren't used normally, they would be activated automatically if they sensed special fluctuations or if an expert came. In addition, Lin Feng had spent a lot of time with soul beasts. He also had Daming, Xiao Wu, and Xiao Ying, who had transformed into soul beasts. He also knew a lot about soul beasts. Therefore, he immediately realized that the expert should be a soul beast. However, Lin Feng knew that on the Douluo continent, other than Daming, Xiao Wu, and the others, there shouldn't be any other divine beast that had transformed into a soul beast. Lin Feng knew that there were 100,000-year soul beasts hiding in those few forests. However, they were far from reaching the stage of transforming. Therefore, Lin Feng was a little surprised by this unfamiliar aura. Without hesitation, Lin Feng created a clone to continue collecting the experimental data. At the same time, he instantly arrived at the commercial district. That person had just entered the city. Lin Feng didn't immediately look for him. Instead, he watched from afar. Lin Feng guessed that this person should be an old antique like the Golden Hoop and Flying Eagle. He had been hiding in some place before. Now that he had secretly come to Great Xia City, he should have come with a purpose. Lin Feng wanted to take a look first. Just like that, Lin Feng quickly arrived at the main road according to his senses. At this moment, he was sitting in a tea house next to him and looking down. At first glance, Lin Feng was a little surprised. With a head of beautiful green hair and a perfect figure, it was actually a female soul beast. Moreover, Lin Feng discovered that this person had a strong life force as he got closer. Although it was much weaker than his immeasurable flower, it was still very strong. A healing-type soul beast that was green all over. Could be a plant-type soul beast? Generally speaking, plant-type soul beasts preferred green. Just like Tang San's mother, Ayan, she often wore green clothes after transforming into her human form. Just as Lin Feng was thinking about this, Bai Ji suddenly looked at the center of the city. At this moment, Daming was playing with Erming, Xiaoying, and Little Moon. He was mainly training their soul skills. From time to time, he would use his soul power to conceal them. It was also because of this that Bai Ji was able to sense his location through these special soul power undulations. At this moment, Bai Ji recalled what Di Tian had said before. A year ago, a soul beast broke through the shackles of 100,000 years and became a member of the soul beast clan. However, that person didn't come, so everyone thought that Di Tian had sensed wrongly. But now, Bai Ji knew that Di Tian hadn't sensed wrongly. There really was such a person, and he was in Great Xia City. However, Bai Ji didn't act rashly. Right now, she knew very little about the Great Xia Empire. This was a powerful empire that could cooperate with the God Realm. She had to be careful. Right now, Bai Ji's plan was very simple. She would spend some time to understand the Great Xia Empire and this continent. At the same time, she would use various opportunities to ascertain the situation of that person. Had he been captured? Or was there something else? She would only make her next move after she ascertained everything. Just like that, Bai Ji went to the pub first. She wanted to go there to find out more information. She didn't realize that Lin Feng was following beside her. He was watching her quietly and listening to what she had to say. Very quickly, 3 hours had passed. It was already midnight. Great Xia City was as lively as ever. Bai Ji didn't stop, but continued to ask around. The more she asked, the more astonished she became. The Great Xia Alliance, Soul Tool Technology, man-made soul rings, Sea God's Island, hidden experts, and so on. These things kept changing her worldview. The Great Xia Alliance had actually managed to change the entire Douluo continent in just a few short years. This kind of thing was really too shocking, especially the matter of man-made soul rings. After hearing about it, she was completely stunned. No wonder she didn't see any soul masters in the Star Do Great Forest. So this was the reason. If man-made soul rings could be created, it would be great news for soul beasts. This meant that the number of soul beasts would increase rapidly in the future. The strength of the soul beast race would also increase. After asking around, Bai Ji found out that there were 2 people who had created man-made soul rings. Their names were Lin Feng and Thanos. In her heart, Bai Ji was very grateful to the 2 of them. Of course, even though she was grateful, because of her identity, she couldn't run to Lin Feng and say anything to his face. This was especially so for Thanos. He was a peerless expert who could negotiate with God's envoys. Furthermore, he had captured Bibi Dong and the 1,000 Daos Lu alive. Those 2 were Douluo, who were at the peak of rank 99. They were so powerful, but they were still captured alive. If Bai Ji stood in front of him, she probably wouldn't be able to hide. Hence, after hearing this news, Bai Ji became even more low-key. Her heart, which had been gradually relaxing, started to worry again. However, the matter of inquiring about information was definitely not going to stop. In the latter half of the night, Bai Ji went to a pub and started to ask around. However, at this moment, a handsome young man suddenly walked towards her. How many secrets does the Stardow Great Forest have? Why didn't I notice you before? By G. Chapter 554. How many secrets does the Stardow Great Forest have? Why didn't I notice you before? When Lin Feng said this, Vicky's entire body tensed up and her brain stopped working. Although she was wearing a veil, her figure was slender and her aura was outstanding. Previously, when she was asking for information in such a crowded place, she would often be hit on by people. Therefore, when Lin Feng walked over, she subconsciously thought that he was the same as those people before and wanted to hit on her. After that, she would release a trace of soul power to suppress him and make him retreat. But now, Lin Feng's simple sentence caused her to explode. How? How is this possible? She was discovered. No matter how she sensed, in Bicky's eyes, Lin Feng was just an ordinary human apart from being handsome. She didn't sense any soul power undulations from him. But such a person was actually discussing the Stardow Great Forest with her so calmly. Furthermore, from his words, this person clearly knew that she came from the Stardow Great Forest and even had a certain understanding of her. In an instant, she released her soul power in a 2-meter radius, isolating everything here from the outside world. Although she knew in her heart that there was a high probability that this person had already seen through her identity, she still had a trace of hope before the other party completely revealed everything. As she thought about it, Bicky pretended to be confused and said, "There are many secrets in the Stardow Great Forest. I wonder what secrets you're talking about." Actually, the first half of Lin Feng's sentence didn't cause too much of a change in Bicky's heart, but the second half was the most important. Why didn't I notice you before? This sentence was too thought-provoking. What was the identity of this handsome youth in front of her? At the very least, he wasn't an ordinary person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing. Furthermore, she couldn't see through him with her 500,000 years of cultivation. This guy was definitely stronger than her. Was he from the God realm? Or was he a super strong individual? She didn't think that it was Thanos because she was very familiar with Thanos' symbol. He was dressed in white and had a white mask. It was too classic. As for the Lin Feng in front of him, the people around him did not react at all to his appearance. There was a high chance that he was not a famous super expert. In fact, Bai Ji didn't know that the reason why Lin Feng hadn't been recognized was because he had used a soul skill called weak concealment. The effect of this soul skill was very simple. It weakened one's sense of existence and caused others to subconsciously ignore you. Even if they saw your face, they would forget you. This was something that Lin Feng had learned from a soul master in the Heaven Battle Soul arena. After some improvements, this soul skill could even achieve the effect of invisibility. With his powerful soul power control, Lin Feng could make everyone in the tavern ignore him except for Bicky. Of course, it's about the secret of your identity. Lin Feng smiled and sat beside Bicky. With a wave of his hand, a cup of beer not far away flew into his hand. This scene shocked Bicky. How'd he do it? There were no soul power undulations, but the beer flew over by itself. This really shocked her. Could it be some special soul tool technology? Or was there some mechanism on the table? Just as Bicky was thinking about this, Lin Feng calmly grabbed the cup of beer and took a sip. I'm very curious. I've been to the Stardow Great Forest many times. I've even dealt with the 100,000-year soul beast there and asked many questions. However, after so many years, I haven't discovered any powerful soul beasts in this forest that haven't been discovered. Lin Feng put down his cup and said calmly. He had been observing Bicky's reaction from the beginning. After all, she was too mysterious. Lin Feng was a little curious that such a powerful soul beast had appeared out of nowhere. Who are you? Bicky's beautiful eyes stared at Lin Feng. Her voice was filled with suspicion. At this moment, she was 100% sure that the youth in front of her had discovered her identity. Furthermore, she couldn't see through him. This meant that Lin Feng had seen through her cultivation. Under such circumstances, the other party still approached her with a relaxed expression. This could only mean one thing. The other party was ridiculously strong. At least, He was confident that he could restrain her. At this moment, Bicky was a little flustered. However, she wasn't completely out of her wits. After all, she was confident that she could escape from a god-ranked expert. Even if Lin Feng was a god's envoy, she wasn't afraid. Furthermore, this was the business district with the most traffic in Great Xia City. If a battle broke out, there would be a large number of innocent deaths. Even a god's envoy wouldn't do anything to her. Otherwise, the impact would be too great. It would affect the Great Xia Empire's perception of the god's realm. Therefore, Bicky was more surprised at this moment. She desperately wanted to know who this person in front of her was and why he knew about her. Lin Feng, an elder of the Great Xia Alliance. Have you heard of him? Lin Feng didn't hide anything and smiled. Lin Feng didn't have much prejudice against the soul beasts. He didn't have any hostile thoughts either. He was more curious. At the same time, he also wanted to get in touch with them. After reaching his current level, Lin Feng didn't feel much about the treasures on the Douluo continent. Compared to these, he cared more about the living beings. To be precise, he cared about the living beings with intelligence. It was because such living beings could produce the power of faith. On the Douluo continent, other than humans with intelligence, the other living beings were the soul beasts. Furthermore, the number of soul beasts was simply too much compared to humans. Especially the low-level soul beasts, their numbers were extremely terrifying. Not to mention the few large forests, the number of soul beasts in the sea was in the hundreds of millions. If Lin Feng could research a method to open up the soul beast's intelligence and then develop them into his believers, the speed at which the power of faith was condensed would be extremely terrifying. Therefore, after discovering Bicky, Lin Feng was both curious and pleasantly surprised. With Daming and Erming as examples, and establishing a good relationship with Bicky, this would be extremely beneficial to his future plans. At this moment, Lin Feng's thoughts were very simple. That was to understand Bicky's information. It would be best if he could understand the situation of the soul beasts on the continent. After that, he would get closer to them and finally carry out his plan. After all, food had to be eaten one bite at a time. He couldn't possibly discuss plans with Bicky immediately. If he did that, she would probably treat him as a fool. Therefore, what Lin Feng wanted to do now was to understand both sides. Lin Feng. Bicky nodded. I've heard of him. The deacon of the Marvel family, the elder brother of the Great Xia Alliance's leader, Tang San. This wasn't as simple as just hearing about it. When Bicky was asking around, she learned a lot about Lin Feng. It could be said that in the entire continent, Lin Feng could be ranked in the top 5. Not only was he a deacon of the Marvel family, but his own research was enough to shock the entire Douluo continent. Therefore, Bicky had specially investigated Lin Feng's situation. Now that she saw it directly, she was in disbelief. It was mainly because, in her impression, although Lin Feng was an alliance elder, his position was similar to Yu Xiaojiang. He was a research talent, and there was basically no record of him fighting. But at this moment, she couldn't see through Lin Feng's strength at all. This was definitely a titled Douluo that was above rank 99. A small deacon of the Marvel family was so powerful. What kind of existence was this Marvel family? At this moment, in Bicky's mind, the Marvel family had become a behemoth. But at the same time, she was a bit relieved. On one hand, she believed that Lin Feng wouldn't attack her here. On the other hand, she could feel that Lin Feng's words were kind. At this moment, Lin Feng was intentionally or unintentionally releasing a trace of his vitality. This kind of energy was very attractive to Bicky. Therefore, at this moment, Bicky had a good impression of Lin Feng. So, your name is? Lin Feng took another sip of beer and asked with a smile. Bicky. Bicky nodded. That's a good name. Lin Feng put down his glass and smiled. Now, you must know a lot about me, but I know nothing about you. So, now, can you tell me something about yourself? For example, where are you from? Lin Feng didn't use words to overwhelm them. Instead, he used words to guide them. At the same time, he kept exuding a sense of affinity, which could reduce the other party's vigilance and make the other party involuntarily tell the truth. After all, Lin Feng could see that Bicky still looked at him with a lot of vigilance. If he asked too much or asked too much, Bicky would be disgusted. However, what Lin Feng didn't expect was that after Bicky heard his words, her face changed instantly. She asked with a vigilant look, "What do you want to do?" While speaking, Bicky's soul power was ready to go. If Lin Feng's answer didn't satisfy her, she would run away quickly. After all, Lin Feng's question really touched her bottom line. Protecting his lord was their most important task. At this time, Lin Feng directly asked for their location. How could she say it? Why are you suddenly so excited? If you don't want to say it, you don't have to. Lin Feng's tone was as calm as ever, without any fluctuations. As he spoke, Lin Feng waved his hand, and a cocktail glass was grabbed by him. Vicky's reaction was actually within Lin Feng's expectations. He was in the Stardow Forest. The setting sun and coiling dragon forest went around a few times, but they didn't find any traces of a powerhouse like Bicky. It was obvious that they deliberately hid. There was a reason why they hid. At this moment, Lin Feng was basically asking for the reason, so Bicky's reaction was normal. Want a glass? Lin Feng shook the glass and handed it over. Bicky stared at Lin Feng's eyes for a while, then took the glass. When Lin Feng was talking just now, Bicky had been observing him. In a few seconds, she remembered all of Lin Feng's reactions. She saw the sincerity in Lin Feng's eyes. He didn't have any other thoughts, so in the end, Bicky didn't choose to leave. Most importantly, there seemed to be an invisible energy on Lin Feng's body that was attracting her. This energy was very special. Bicky felt that if she could obtain it, it would be very beneficial for her. I don't have any evil intentions. I just want to understand the situation of soul beasts. Lin Feng saw Bicky take a sip of the wine and smiled. In the Great Xia Alliance, there are actually a few soul beasts that have transformed into humans. We get along very well with them, so we don't have any enmity towards soul beasts. Furthermore, I've also researched man-made soul rings. My goal is to prevent soul masters from hunting soul beasts. The Great Xia Alliance wants to build a friendly relationship with soul beasts. Lin Feng's two sentences really touched Bicky's heart. The first sentence was that there were a few soul beasts in the Great Xia Alliance who had transformed into humans. This was something that Bicky didn't know about. Lin Feng didn't know about this because not many people knew about it. At this moment, Lin Feng had specially told Bicky because she was a soul beast. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told other soul masters. The second sentence was when Lin Feng brought up the issue of man-made soul rings. Bicky was suddenly startled awake. Yes, this person in front of her was someone who had researched man-made soul rings. Previously, she hadn't discovered a single soul master in the Stardow Great Forest, and it was all because of this person in front of her. At this moment, Lin Feng had also said that his goal was to build a friendly relationship with soul beasts. These words were very pleasing to Bicky's ears. Suddenly, Bicky's impression of Lin Feng skyrocketed. Why does the Great Xia Alliance want to build a good relationship with soul beasts? All along, soul masters and soul beasts have been completely opposed. Why does the Great Xia Alliance want to do this? What's driving you? Bicky asked solemnly. This question was very important to her, because it meant what she could say next. At the same time, she also wanted to see the soul beast that had transformed into humans that Lin Feng had mentioned. If the Great Xia Alliance really wanted to build a good relationship with soul beasts, and if their attitude was very proper, she felt that this could be an opportunity. After all, the target of the soul beast's revenge was the God Realm, and not the humans on the Douluo continent. As for the soul beast that they had killed, it wasn't a big deal to them. This was because, in Bicky's opinion, only soul beasts that were more than 200,000 years old could be considered a member of the Great Xia Alliance. As for soul beasts that were 100,000 years old, they weren't qualified. Therefore, if they could really cooperate with the Great Xia Alliance, it would be very beneficial for the soul beasts. Of course, because they had to avoid the God Realm, this cooperation could only be done in secret. Most importantly, the location of their base still had to be kept a secret. They had to put on a disguise. Chapter 555. Just as Bai Ji was lost in her thoughts, Lin Feng was also deep in thought. It was obvious that Bai Ji's series of questions were a test for him. After thinking for a while, Lin Feng said, "Perhaps in your eyes, soul beasts and humans are at odds with each other, and there's no way to reconcile them. However, in my eyes, these are just appearances. Whether it's soul beasts or humans, they're all living beings on the Douluo continent. As long as we work hard to find a reasonable solution, the two will definitely be able to coexist. This isn't just my personal opinion. The Great Xia Alliance is also committed to this. As long as you observe carefully, you'll realize that the Great Xia Alliance has no enmity towards soul beasts. With that, Lin Feng paused for a moment before continuing. Right now, there shouldn't be many soul masters hunting soul beasts in the various large forests. Do you know why this is so? At this moment, Bai Ji was pondering over Lin Feng's words and the meaning behind them. When she suddenly heard a question, she subconsciously shook her head and said, "I don't know." Bai Ji had no way to verify that there were no soul masters in the various large forests. However, she was certain that there weren't any human soul masters in the Star Do Great Forest. After this period of understanding, Bai Ji roughly understood that the main reason why there weren't any soul masters in the Star Do Great Forest was because of the Great Xia Empire. However, Bai Ji was very curious about the specific reason behind this. Lin Feng smiled and answered, "It's very simple. On one hand, it's because of the appearance of man-made soul rings. On the other hand, it's because of the Empire's policies. The man-made soul rings that we invented aren't as simple soul rings. They can be adapted to the soul skills of the soul master according to their martial souls. Furthermore, they can be independently controlled in terms of age. This way, as long as a soul master uses man-made soul rings, every one of them will be able to obtain a perfect soul ring combination. It's precisely because of these advantages that all the soul masters on the continent were shocked when man-made soul rings were introduced. Now that production has caught up, they've quickly become popular in the world of soul masters. Of course, no matter how outstanding the man-made soul rings are, if there is no national control, there will inevitably be people who will continue to hunt soul beasts. That's why the Empire's policy is to encourage all soul masters below the Soul Emperor rank to receive a man-made soul ring of the corresponding age for free from the various alliance branches. Even if you're a Soul Emperor or above, as long as it's your first time using a man-made soul ring, you can get a 50% discount. At the same time, as long as a soul master has used a man-made soul ring, they can enjoy many free opportunities in the alliance, such as the sparring square, the cultivation room, and so on. It's only because of the Empire's vigorous promotion that there are almost no soul masters in the various large forests. Seeing that Bicky was in deep thought, Lin Feng didn't continue speaking. Instead, he took a sip of wine and waited quietly. After a while, Bai Ji smiled and said, "If it's really as you say, then the Great Xia Empire is very friendly towards soul beasts." Although she didn't confirm it, Bai Ji could feel Lin Feng's sincerity. Lin Feng smiled and said, "In at most a year, all the soul masters in the Empire will develop the habit of using man-made soul rings. When that happens, the relationship between humans and soul beasts will start to change qualitatively. Soul bones were much more precise than soul rings. Lin Feng couldn't replicate them like he could with soul rings. Therefore, in a short period of time, he couldn't fundamentally stop people from hunting soul beasts and obtaining their soul bones. However, the number of new soul bones in the world of soul masters was really too little compared to the number of new soul rings. Furthermore, soul bones were different from soul rings. They could be passed down and weren't one-off consumables. In this way, as long as the Empire controlled it well, the hunting of soul bones could still be controlled. I've said so much to express the goodwill of the Great Xia Alliance." Lin Feng smiled and said, "Then Miss Bai Ji, I wonder if you can tell me the purpose of your visit to Great Xia City this time?" Lin Feng's question showed his politeness to the fullest. Otherwise, with his strength, he could have taken Bai Ji by surprise and placed restrictions on her body, just like what he did to Thousand Dao Lu and Bibi Dong. Bai Ji was subconsciously vigilant. However, she quickly thought of something and finally said, "I'm here to scout for information. Soul beasts are usually in hibernation and haven't come out for tens of thousands of years. Therefore, I was sent out to scout for information." Bai Ji only said the most basic information. It didn't involve the location or her master's comfort, so she didn't hide anything. I see. Lin Feng nodded. This was similar to what he had guessed. After all, Bai Ji's appearance was too sudden. There were no signs at all. She should have fallen into hibernation or something. After all, soul beasts had a much longer lifespan than humans. It was normal for them to be in hibernation. Elder Lin, Bai Ji suddenly said, you said that there are soul beasts in the Alliance who have transformed into humans. I wonder if I can see them? At this moment, Bai Ji believed 70% of what Lin Feng said. Finally, if she had the chance to see these soul beasts in human form, her trust in Lin Feng's words would probably rise to 98%. Of course, follow me, Lin Feng said with a smile. After that, he didn't say anything and directly walked out of the tavern. Lin Feng didn't walk very quickly with Bai Ji. Instead, he slowly walked out of the business district and went around the inner city. Finally, he walked towards the experimental area in the north. The Great Xia Empire's Soul Master Academy was located in the northern city district. It was divided into elementary, intermediate, and advanced levels. Little Moon, Xiao Ying, and Erming were all in the elementary Soul Master Academy. As for Xiao Wu and Daming, they were also teachers here. Not only them, but Grandmaster, Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and Dai Mubai were also teachers in the academy. However, they weren't permanent teachers. Instead, they were like special professors who would only teach once every week or half a month. Today's luck was pretty good. Lin Feng sensed that Xiao Wu, Daming, and Little Moon were together. They seemed to be in the middle of a practical lesson. Lin Feng led Bai Ji in that direction. Along the way, Bai Ji observed many things in the surroundings. On one hand, she was shocked by the prosperity of Great Xia City. On the other hand, she yearned for the happiness of everyone. Along the way, almost everyone had a happy smile on their face. Bai Ji yearned for this kind of thing. After all, the current situation of the soul beasts was too terrible. Previously, they didn't even dare to come out. They were afraid that they would be ambushed by people from the God Realm. But now, in Great Xia City, these people's happy expressions were a stark contrast to Di Tian and the Bear Lord situation. They're right in front, Lin Feng said with a smile. Hearing this, Bai Ji immediately looked forward. She couldn't suppress the anticipation on her face. She was hoping that Lin Feng's words were true. She was also looking forward to the situation after peace between humans and soul beasts. She was also looking forward to the appearance of new soul beasts. At this moment, Daming and Xiao Wu also sensed their arrival. After all, Lin Feng didn't conceal himself. Instead, he walked over openly with Bai Ji. At this moment, Bai Ji had already taken off her veil, revealing her ravishing beauty. Brother is here to see Xiao Ying. Xiao Ying was the first to discover Lin Feng. He immediately ran over excitedly. Immediately thereafter, Little Moon and Ming also rushed over in elation. Big brother, did you bring us anything good to eat? Eat. You only know how to eat. There's nothing to eat today. Lin Feng reprimanded them. These little fellows were especially gluttonous, especially snacks. They loved to eat. Usually, Xiao Wu, Tang San, Ayan, and the others doted on these little kids. They basically gave them whatever they wanted. As a result, they had gained a little weight. While reprimanding the three of them, Lin Feng activated his spirit power and called Xiao Wu, who was teaching a class in another classroom, over. At this moment, Daming also walked over. He first greeted Lin Feng, then stared at Bai Ji. Erming, Xiao Ying, and the others had transformed into their human forms. They had to cultivate their own strength again, so they didn't sense it. But Daming was different. He immediately noticed Bai Ji's difference. Furthermore, he could vaguely sense a familiar feeling from Bicky. Could it be that this person was also a soul beast like him? Just as Daming's emotions were fluctuating, Xiao Wu quickly ran over. Although they were in class, Lin Feng must have something important to say to her. Therefore, Xiao Wu didn't hesitate and ran over. Fengge, why are you here at the academy? What a rare guest. Xiao Wu's tone had a hint of complaint. Recently, Lin Feng had been too busy. The few of them hadn't met in private for a long time. The last time they met was at the cooperation meeting between the divine envoys and the Great Xia Empire. Furthermore, that was a public place, and they were talking about matters related to the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, seeing Lin Feng again now, Xiao Wu was happy but also had a hint of complaint. After coughing twice, Lin Feng laughed dryly. What rare guest! Aren't I too busy? After that, his face turned serious, and he said, Xiao Wu, the person standing behind me, is called Bai Ji. She's also a soul beast that has transformed into a human. However, she's not the kind that can transform into a human after 100,000 years. She's like Daming, who obtained the ability to transform after breaking through the shackles of 100,000 years. Hearing this, everyone looked at Bicky curiously. Bai Ji also took a step forward and suppressed the excitement in her heart. She said nervously, Hello, I'm Bai Ji. In fact, Bai Ji was also a little nervous when she walked with Lin Feng towards the northern part of the city. After all, the deeper she went into the city, the more dangerous it would be for her. If Lin Feng set up an ambush, it would be much more difficult for her to escape. Therefore, she was taking a gamble this time. She was betting that Lin Feng was telling the truth. She was betting that the feeling of closeness that Lin Feng gave her wasn't a lie. And now, she was betting on the right thing. When she saw Daming, Erming, and Xiao Wu, Bai Ji was so excited that she didn't know what to say. After all, the significance of this was too extraordinary for her. Soul beasts and humans didn't exist together. This was a concept that had existed since ancient times. Furthermore, the two of them had been opposing each other for too long. It was so long that it was engraved in people's bones. And now, from the Great Xia Empire behind Lin Feng and Xiao Wu in front of her, Bai Ji saw hope for the two of them to coexist. You're a soul beast too? Xiao Wu looked at Bai Ji suspiciously. After that, her soul power surged and spread towards Bai Ji. Bai Ji's concealment skills were too strong. Other than Lin Feng and Daming, even Xiao Wu, who was a titled soul master, Douluo, couldn't see through her. On Bai Ji's side, if other soul masters were to check on her, she would definitely conceal herself. However, it was Xiao Wu who was checking on her. As a soul beast, Bai Ji didn't resist. Instead, she released her aura. Xiao Wu was shocked. She looked at Daming and said at the same time, Emerald Swan. After hearing this, Lin Feng revealed a look of realization. He was wondering why Bai Ji had such a strong life force. So she was an Emerald Swan. This was a soul beast with an extremely strong life force. It could fly, and its survival skills were top-notch. Furthermore, the Emerald Swan was extremely rare. Lin Feng had only seen its name in books. He had never seen a live one. Why haven't I seen such a strong soul beast in the Star Do Great Forest before? Did she come from somewhere else? Daming was slightly puzzled. Daming and Erming were the overlords of the Star Do Great Forest. They knew a lot about the forest. From what they knew, there were 100,000-year soul beasts hibernating in the forest. However, it was impossible for one as strong as Bai Ji to appear, unless these soul beasts hibernated for an extremely long time that exceeded their imagination. Xiao Wu shook her head and said, She shouldn't have come from somewhere else. I can feel the aura of the Star Do Great Forest on her body. There were more than 10 large and small soul beast forests on the continent. Not mentioning the small ones, the soul beasts and the large ones usually had heavy scars on their bodies. Xiao Wu could also sense the aura of the Star Do Great Forest from Bai Ji's body. Daming heard this and carefully sensed for a moment. He quickly nodded and said, That's right. She came from the Star Do Great Forest. After that, Daming asked, You're Bai Ji, right? Can you tell us more about your situation? From what we know, there shouldn't be a soul beast like you in the Star Do Great Forest. Although Bicky's strength was slightly stronger than Daming and Xiao Wu's, after reaching 200,000 years, the difference in strength wasn't that big. Furthermore, they were representing the Great Xia Empire. Thus, they spoke as if they were on equal footing. Bai Ji didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. However, she was thinking about whether she should answer Daming's question. After all, this matter concerned her master and the safety of the entire soul beast race. Although Daming and Xiao Wu were soul beasts, she couldn't tell them before she was familiar with them. Chapter 556. After hearing Daming's question, Bicky pondered for a moment. Then, she said, "This matter concerns the safety of the soul beast race. I can't tell you the details, but I can tell you the basics." Stardew Great Forest. After talking for about 2 minutes, Bicky expressed two things overall. First, the soul beast race couldn't come into being at the moment, so she couldn't explain the situation in detail. Second, she hoped that Daming could make a trip back to the Stardew Great Forest with her to meet the other soul beasts. Lin Feng had already expected the first one. After all, Bicky was too mysterious, and the soul beast race was definitely the kind that lived in seclusion. Secondly, Bicky wanted Ming to go with them. This was probably the mission that she wanted to complete the most right now. Perhaps she didn't confirm it in advance, but after seeing Daming and the others, it became the highest priority. After all, Lin Feng could roughly tell from Bicky's words that there weren't many soul beasts in this race. After seeing Ming, Bicky wanted to bring Ming back to acknowledge his ancestors because they were both soul beasts. After hearing this, Daming didn't agree immediately. Instead, he looked at Lin Feng. Obviously, at this moment, Daming wanted to hear Lin Feng's opinion on this important matter. This didn't mean that Daming didn't have his own opinions, but he wasn't alone now. He had too many things to consider. First and foremost, he cared about Xiao Wu, Erming, and Xiao Ying's feelings. As for Lin Feng's opinion, it was even more important. After all, these people, including himself, were all led by Lin Feng. Under such circumstances, it was understandable that he looked for Lin Feng to make the decision. Seeing this, Lin Feng shook his head gently and said, "Before we figure out the situation, we can't follow." What they had heard so far was only Bicky's side of the story. Although Lin Feng didn't think that the possibility of her lying was high, he didn't dare to guarantee that it was 100% true before he knew the actual situation. At this moment, his words actually cut off any possibility of Bicky bringing Daming back. On the way here, Lin Feng had specifically asked if she could bring him to the hidden location of the soul beasts. Bicky had clearly said no, so his words made Bicky give up on the idea of bringing Daming back. At this moment, Lin Feng looked at Bicky and said, "As long as you can tell us the location of the soul beasts and let us investigate it, Daming can go with peace of mind." This wasn't an excuse Lin Feng came up with just to find out the location. He really did think so, now that Daming was a senior teacher of the Great Xia Soul Master Academy. He was a top talent of the Great Xia Empire. Lin Feng didn't want him to be in danger. Hearing this, Bicky didn't hesitate and shook her head. "Elder Lin, this is too important. I can't make a decision. How about this? Since we don't know much about each other, I'll go back first and ask Lord Beast God for instructions. How about we discuss this later?" If Bicky could make the decision, she might have directly told Lin Feng about the situation. After all, Bicky saw too many qualities in the Great Xia Empire that others didn't have. Most importantly, the Great Xia Empire wasn't all talk and no action. Instead, they had put everything into practice. Furthermore, there were living examples like Xiao Wu and Daming. Under such circumstances, it was hard for Bicky to doubt them, even if she wanted to. However, she couldn't make the decision. She had to go back and ask Tion. All right, Lin Feng nodded. He also knew that Bicky couldn't make the decision. There was no point in continuing the discussion. He had to let her go. Furthermore, if she left, Lin Feng didn't have to follow her. He could just place an avatar on her. As long as she returned to her hidden place, Lin Feng would know where she was. When that happened, Lin Feng would have the initiative. Whether it was going to take a look or as a backup, it was a good choice. 3 days. I'll give Elder Lin an answer in 3 days, Bicky said with certainty. I hope so. Lin Feng smiled. Elder Lin, I'll take my leave then. Bicky clasped her hands. Lin Feng also clasped his hands. Goodbye. Seeing this, Bicky nodded at Daming and the others. Then, she quickly rushed towards the northern city gate. Nobody stopped her along the way. Bicky quickly exited the city gate. When they reached the nearby forest, Bicky's anxious heart slowly calmed down. Deep down, Bicky trusted Lin Feng. However, the Great Xia City was a human city, and there were many titled battle pet warriors there. For Bicky, it was dangerous. Therefore, she had been very nervous in the middle of the journey. She only felt safe now that she was outside. Bicky turned around and took one last look at the Great Xia City. Then, without further ado, she made up her mind and headed towards the Stardow Great Forest. At the same time, in the northern city district, Xiao Wu and the others were pestering Lin Feng, asking him all sorts of questions. They want to know more about the situation. Lin Feng didn't know much about the situation. Therefore, he could only make some guesses. Let's wait for 3 days. Bicky will come back. By then, we'll know everything, Lin Feng said, gazing into the distance. Okay, you can continue with your classes. Mr. Destroy needs me to record the data for his experiment. With that, Lin Feng didn't stay any longer and quickly left. On the other hand, Xiao Wu, Big Ming, and the others were discussing fervently. After all, this matter was very important to them. They had never thought that there would be such a powerful soul beast on the continent. Bicky's sudden appearance shattered Daming and the others' worldview. While they were shocked, they were also very curious. Soul beasts? What kind of existence was she? Did she have many powerful soul beasts like Daming? Just as they were discussing, Lin Feng had already compiled the data collected by his avatar and analyzed it. Of course, this analysis wasn't done on Lin Feng's actual body. It was done on his avatar. His actual body was acting as a transfer station for his spiritual power. This allowed his avatar and avatar in the Great Xia City to keep in contact. Lin Feng had a range of control over his avatar and avatar. This range was the range of his spiritual power. Currently, his spiritual power could cover about a third of the continent. This was a state where Lin Feng compressed his spiritual power to the extreme and then extended it in one direction. If it was bidirectional, it would be like what Lin Feng was doing. With his actual body as the center, his spiritual power would spread in all directions. The range of his spiritual power would be a huge circle. His avatar and avatar would be 2 points on this circle. However, this range wasn't very large. It could only cover half of the original range, which was about 1/6 of the continent. Although this wasn't much compared to the entire continent, it was enough for him to successfully connect Great Xia City to the Stardow Great Forest. At this moment, Lin Feng's actual body was in between the two. His avatar was quietly standing in Great Xia City, while his avatar was in the Stardow Great Forest. He was trying to sense Bicky's location. She was very fast. It took her less than 10 minutes to reach the Stardow Great Forest from Great Xia City. Following this, Bicky quickly passed through the periphery of the forest and entered what Lin Feng thought was the core of the forest. Bicky didn't stop. Instead, she continued walking deeper into the forest. This deeper area was also within the Stardow Great Forest. Lin Feng had actually patrolled this area before. Back then, he walked around and didn't discover anything. And now, Lin Feng sensed that Bicky was heading east quickly. She kept going. About 10 minutes later, Bicky suddenly slowed down. At this moment, Lin Feng sensed that Bicky's location was at the edge of the eastern part of the continent. It was very remote. If she continued walking east, she would reach the desolate mountains and the sea. Douluo's main prosperous area was the western part of the continent. Because of the terrain, very few people went to the east. It was because of this that Lin Feng subconsciously neglected that area. When he was traveling the continent, he didn't pay too much attention to that area. Now, he really didn't expect that the hidden location of the soul beast would be hidden so deeply. But then again, could this location be fake? Was it just to confuse him? After all, this discovery was too smooth. Lin Feng felt a little absent-minded. His clone was actually very hard to discover because it was too hidden. As long as he didn't actively draw energy, he was dead. This clone was like a speck of dust on your body. Was it really too hard to attract attention? However, Lin Feng had never seen the soul beast before. Who knew what special method they had to detect him? If Bicky had discovered his tracking device early on, the place she was leading him to now might be fake. If Bicky was more cautious, even if she didn't discover Lin Feng's little movements, she might have fainted out of vigilance to prevent anyone from following her. Thinking of this, Lin Feng didn't feel anxious at all. He waited quietly. At the same time, in the deepest part of the Douluo Great Forest, Vicky had already arrived outside the hidden formation of the soul beasts. Just like Lin Feng said, she was still a little cautious. At this moment, Vicky wasn't in a hurry to enter. Instead, she changed her direction and retreated a little. Then, she changed her direction again and walked a little forward. After repeating this a few times, Vicky finally walked into the formation. After that, Vicky couldn't suppress the joy in her heart and quickly walked towards the center. In the outside world, Lin Feng's lips curled up slightly. She should have really entered the hidden place. Previously, he could sense that Vicky was deliberately running around in the forest. Perhaps she was trying to mislead others, or perhaps she was trying to test something. Perhaps she had to go in this way to enter. In any case, at this moment, she should have completely entered the formation. This was because Lin Feng could clearly sense that there was a special energy conversion inside. Even his spiritual power's senses were weakened by a lot. However, Lin Feng was still too strong. This feeling wasn't cut off. It was just a little intermittent. At this moment, Lin Feng knew the location and didn't rashly go in. After all, he had asked Vicky to go back and discuss it first. If he suddenly appeared now, it would be a little untrustworthy. As for secretly observing, this wasn't a good plan either. This was because Lin Feng didn't understand the formation at all. What if he was discovered or triggered some kind of mechanism? Although Lin Feng was sure that his life wasn't in danger, it wouldn't be good if an accident happened. Thinking about this, Lin Feng continued to wait and sense quietly. He wanted to wait for 1 or 2 hours. As long as Vicky didn't make any large-scale movements, Lin Feng could more or less confirm that this place was the hidden place of the soul beasts. Just as Lin Feng was waiting, Vicky saw Di Tian and the others. "Vicky, you're back. It's great that you're back safely." The myriad Demon King welcomed her happily. Di Tian and the others also appeared one after another. They were happy that Vicky had returned safely. After all, if Vicky could return safely, it meant that there wasn't much danger in the outside world. Especially since Vicky had a smile on her face. She must have heard some good news in the outside world. Thinking about this, everyone quickly got down to business after greeting her. "Vicky, what's the situation in the outside world? Is there danger? Was the commotion from before because of the God world?" Also, they had a lot of questions, but Vicky didn't answer them immediately. Instead, she suppressed the excitement in her heart and said to Di Tian, "There isn't much danger in the outside world. Although there are many titled Douluo, they're all under the jurisdiction of the Great Xia Empire." Great Xia Empire? What kind of empire is that? This unfamiliar empire's name confused everyone. They were all curious. The Great Xia Empire is a powerful force that suddenly unified the continent. The people from the God world came to the lower realm because of this Great Xia Empire. In the empire, Vicky quickly told them about the Great Xia Empire. Everyone gasped when they heard this. Well, what kind of joke was this? In just a month, the Great Xia Alliance destroyed 2 great empires and the martial spirit palace. Then, they unified the entire world. Although they didn't know much about the human world, they still knew about the empire. A country could only be called an empire when it was powerful to a certain extent. The Great Xia Alliance destroyed 2 great empires in just a month. This was too shocking. There is also the messenger from the God world who came to the lower realm for the Great Xia Empire. Both sides were even discussing cooperation. There were also man-made soul rings and various policies that were beneficial to soul beasts. Vicky told them all about these things. In these few minutes, Di Tian and the rest were all stunned by these words. This was too overturning their worldview. If not for Vicky's serious expression, everyone would have thought that she was playing with them. However, the truth was the truth. No matter how much they didn't believe it, it had happened. Most importantly, the Great Xia Empire was very friendly to soul beasts. Di Tian also sensed that the clansman was in Great Xia City. All these signs showed that the Great Xia Empire was worth befriending. Chapter 557. Of course, the matter of the soul beasts was very important, and some things couldn't be decided on a whim. Hence, after hearing Biki's words, Dition fell in a deep thought. Right now, the outside world was in the midst of a huge change. Because of the Great Xia Empire's existence, the continent had changed so much in just 1 or 2 months. This was especially so for the godly realm. They had directly contacted the Great Xia Empire and even cooperated with them. Under such circumstances, if the soul beast didn't change their minds, they would be sitting ducks. Hence, it was necessary for them to contact the Great Xia Empire. However, they couldn't expose their location rashly. After all, their master's safety was very important. Dition couldn't be at ease before he understood the situation of the Great Xia Empire. With that thought in mind, Dition said, "If the Great Xia Empire is really as kind to the soul beasts as Biki says, then we'll definitely be on good terms with them. However, we still have to put your safety first. Hence, we can't expose ourselves directly. We have to think of a way to form a good relationship with the Great Xia Empire secretly. Think about it, and see if there's any way to do this." After hearing this, everyone fell in a deep thought. It had to be said that the news that Biki brought back shocked everyone. Right now, they were going to contact the human world again. This was unprecedented. While everyone was looking forward to it, they were also a little nervous. "We can choose to negotiate with the Great Xia Empire outside. This way, our master's safety will be guaranteed, and we will be able to negotiate with the Great Xia Empire," the Myriad Demon King suggested, with him as a mouthpiece. As long as they chose to negotiate in the periphery of the Star Great Forest, there shouldn't be too much danger in terms of safety. Hearing this, Biki shook her head and said, "No, Lin Feng said that they need to understand our situation. Only then can the Great Xia Empire form a good relationship with us. Otherwise, if the situation isn't clear, they might be in danger." This sounded very overboard, but Dition could understand. After all, they were too unfamiliar to the humans. It was normal for them to be wary of them when they suddenly appeared. At this moment, the Bear Lord said, "Why don't we create a fake base somewhere else? There's a saying in the human world, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. We just need to create a base somewhere else and negotiate there." It had been tens of thousands of years since the Soul Beast clan had appeared in the world, and the outside world had no idea where they were hiding. At this time, as long as they build a fake base, it shouldn't be a problem to fool the people of the Great Xia Empire. Dition thought for a moment and said, "That's a good idea. After all, the humans outside don't know our situation at all. Even if we create a fake base, it's enough to fool them. As long as the people of the Great Xia Empire believe that it is our base, they should be able to feel at ease." The reason why Biki didn't want Lin Feng to know their location was to protect her master. Now, as long as they could create a fake base, not only would they be able to fulfill this condition perfectly, but it would also greatly increase their safety. Thinking about it, Biki nodded and said, "This plan should work. As long as it can be carried out successfully, Lin Feng should let Daming come over." The reason why Biki mentioned Daming here was because their goal was very simple. They wanted to absorb Daming completely and make him a member of the Soul Beast clan. This wasn't a simple roping in. Dition would tell him about the history of the Soul Beast clan and eventually bring him to their master to receive her blessings. They believed that after this process, Daming would definitely be able to officially integrate into this big family. After all, their master was the common ancestor of the Soul Beast clan. They believed that with her guidance, Daming would definitely understand things. "Then what are we waiting for?" Dition said, "Myriad Demon King, go and find a suitable location. Biki, Bear Lord, go and build it. I'll check out the surroundings." Also, under Dition's arrangements, everyone started to move and build another base. Regarding this, no one was perfunctory. They were all very attentive and truly treated it as another base to build. After all, as long as the Great Xia Empire believed in this matter, their activities would be centered around this base for the next few decades or even centuries. If they didn't build it well, they wouldn't be the ones to suffer in the end. Hence, at this moment, they were all working in the best direction. Just as Dition and the others were busy building the second base, Lin Feng didn't stay in the Star Do Great Forest for long. After sensing Bicky's movement, he immediately returned. At this moment, he already knew where the Soul Beast clan was hiding. It was equivalent to grasping their lifeline. This way, he wasn't in a hurry at all. He only needed to wait quietly for 3 days. When that time came, Bicky would definitely reveal more information when she came to discuss with them. Lin Feng only needed to use this information and the clues in his hands to easily play a good hand. Thinking about this, Lin Feng was in a good mood. It was also exceptionally easy for him to organize the experimental data in his hands. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. At this moment, in the northern core area of the Stardo Great Forest, in a valley with a huge lake, Tion and the others were working in full swing. This place could be considered a blessed land. There were large amounts of soulstone mines in the depths of the valley. Cultivating here would yield twice the results with half the effort. In the past, this was Bicky's place of hibernation. Now that it had been specially modified, it became simple and holy. Not only was there a formation surrounding it, but a portion of the myriad Demon King's roots had also extended over and stimulated the energy in the Soulstone mine. The energy in the entire valley was extremely dense. Tion and the others were very large, so they were very fast when it came to civil engineering. In just 2 days, the new base was more or less completed. On the last day, they were perfecting the base. At the same time, they were modifying the surrounding environment to better fit their current state. During this period, Tion even talked to everyone. This way, if anything happened in the future, they wouldn't be too flustered. Instead, they would have a suitable solution. Just as Tion and the others were doing all this, Lin Feng's rapid breakthrough experiment in the northern experimental area of the Great Xia City was also completed. Of course, this didn't mean that the entire experiment was completed. Instead, it meant that he had tested all the methods of injecting energy once. He only had to wait for a month. If nothing happened, he could roughly announce that the experiment was a success. This 1 month was the golden time for Lin Feng to confirm that there were no side effects from the experiment. Right now, he had tested all the combinations of energy. If nothing happened in a month, it meant that it was very safe. Right now, although Lin Feng didn't have a month's worth of data, he had already tried all the methods. If nothing happened during this period, it meant that the experiment was already halfway to success. Therefore, Lin Feng was very happy about this. At this moment, Lin Feng wasn't complacent because of this. He didn't only have one experiment to do. He also had to research his divine power, increase the age of his soul rings, and so on. Lin Feng still had to overcome these obstacles one by one. The path was long, and Lin Feng had to maintain a good mentality. Actually, Lin Feng was about to reach rank 100 and ascend to the God Realm. He didn't need to spend time on this at all. However, Lin Feng was very far-sighted. He didn't only see what was in front of him, he also saw the sea and the distance. On the surface, he was only researching to obtain more power of faith in Douluo's world. Then, he would benefit the living beings in Douluo's world. But in reality, all of this was very useful, because researching all of this was very helpful for Lin Feng to see through the nature of the world. And what was the nature of the world? Wasn't it the power of laws that the sea god and the others were talking about? As long as Lin Feng understood all of this, wouldn't he be able to obtain a deity position easily? Furthermore, there were many similarities between energy. At this moment, Lin Feng had thoroughly researched the form of energy in Douluo's world. When he went to the God Realm in the future, his research on divine power would be twice as effective with half the effort. Also, the alternate world that the sea god had mentioned previously allowed Lin Feng to know about parallel worlds. If he could research this thoroughly, Lin Feng would have the chance to go to alternate worlds on his own. He might even be able to travel to various planes. It was precisely because this research was very important to his future development that Lin Feng wouldn't reduce his time on the experiment, even if he had to delay the matter of faith. Just like that, Lin Feng quickly entered the analysis of divine power. Time flew by quickly, and another day passed. In the Star Do Great Forest, Tion and the others had already completed the new base. They had also colluded with each other in terms of the speech. At this moment, Bai Ji, who had finished her preparations, left the Star-Do Great Forest and headed towards Great Xia City. At the same time, in Great Xia City, Tang San and Lin Feng had also finished their preparations. As this was a secret meeting, they didn't make any arrangements. Everything was done quietly, and even many of the higher-ups in the alliance didn't know about this. After all, everyone's perception of soul beasts hadn't completely changed yet. They needed some time to accept this matter, so Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to say it. Furthermore, Lin Feng decided that if the discussion went smoothly later, he wouldn't let Bai Ji and the others' news spread too early. After all, there was a limit to the amount of information that the masses could receive. In the following period of time, Lin Feng was prepared to use the opportunity of cooperating with the God Realm to deify Thanos. During this period of time, he naturally wouldn't allow other important news to appear. Otherwise, if two big pieces of news were to overlap, it would definitely cause an impact. In a courtyard at the foot of a mountain north of the Great Xia Palace, Xiao Wu, Daming, Tang San, and Lin Feng were waiting quietly. Back then, they had made an agreement with Bai Ji to secretly meet in this courtyard 3 days later. At this moment, everyone in the courtyard was discussing Bai Ji's matter, as well as the countermeasures that they had come up with over the past few days. After all, the soul beasts were still very powerful. Furthermore, they were another major power on the Douluo continent. It was only right for them to treat them seriously. Suddenly, just as everyone was discussing, Lin Feng suddenly looked towards the north. He could sense that Bicky was flying rapidly towards Grand Xia City in the sky, not too far away from it. This wasn't because Lin Feng was actively sensing, but because he was receiving information passively. Therefore, the distance he could sense was a little short. Of course, this short distance was only relatively speaking. For others, it might take them a long time to run this distance. Feng goes by Ji here. Tang San's observation was more sensitive, so he sensed Lin Feng's abnormality. Lin Feng nodded and said, "She should be here soon." Indeed, just 5 minutes after Lin Feng said this, Bai Ji appeared in front of this courtyard. The courtyard's door was wide open. Bai Ji didn't knock on the door, but walked in directly. "Greetings, Elder Lin, Alliance Leader Tang." Bai Ji was very polite and bowed slightly to the two of them after entering. As for Daming and Xiao Wu, she also nodded slightly as a form of greeting. "How is it? Has your beast god agreed to my request?" Lin Feng didn't beat around the bush and asked directly. He had said most of what needed to be said before, so there was no need to waste time. Lin Feng only wanted to know Bai Ji's attitude. As long as their attitude was good, Lin Feng could maintain a good cooperation with them. If their attitude wasn't good, Lin Feng was prepared to ignore this so-called Soul Beast clan and keep them in suspense until his plan was completed. Then, he would find trouble with them. This wasn't some random talk to find trouble, but a real visit to them. Most people were either curious or afraid of the unknown. This so-called Soul Beast clan was a 100,000-year-old soul beast. They were equivalent to a group of titled Douluo in the human world. They were an extremely powerful force. Furthermore, Lin Feng didn't know anything about them, so it was more of a fear. This wasn't an individual's fear, but a relative fear between forces. A powerhouse with the surname Dong once said that the best way to deal with fear was to face it. Therefore, if they didn't cooperate, Lin Feng would definitely reason with them personally. But soon, Bicky nodded and said, "Elder Lin, I've told the Beast God about the Great Xia Empire's preferential treatment of us soul beasts, and he's very happy about it. That's why he's gladly invited all of you to visit." At this point, Bai Ji paused for a moment before continuing. "However, our clan has a request." "Speak." Lin Feng raised an eyebrow. He also had a request, and that was that the cooperation couldn't be made public. It had to be kept a secret for a period of time. Lin Feng was still thinking about what excuse he should use to bring up this point. He didn't expect Bai Ji to bring up the request first. This way, he could say it naturally later. Thinking of this, Lin Feng was a little happy. The request is very simple. Our Soul Beast clan wishes to remain hidden from the world. Therefore, this cooperation can be carried out in secret and not spread. Bai Ji's tone had a hint of pleading. Lin Feng, eh. Chapter 558. After hearing Bicky's words, Lin Feng was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed. Just now, he was thinking of using Bicky's conditions as an excuse to raise his own conditions. He didn't expect that happiness would come so suddenly. Bicky actually said the conditions that he wanted to say. This was simply a perfect start. On Bicky's side, seeing that Lin Feng was stunned and didn't speak, she thought that her conditions were a little too much. After all, from her perspective, the Great Xia Empire had just been established. Of course, they needed more big events to consolidate their position. Therefore, the matter of the Soul Beast Alliance had to be widely publicized. In this way, the conditions she raised seemed a little harsh. Thinking of this, Bicky quickly said, I know that this condition is a little harsh, but it's not time for the Soul Beast race to come out yet. Therefore, I hope that we can cooperate in secret. For this, we can give you some compensation in terms of cultivation resources. The Soul Beast race was in the Star Douluo Great Forest. This was a natural advantage. After all, most of these were undeveloped areas. There were many mineral veins, spirit herbs, and so on. The resources were extremely rich. The Great Xia Empire and the Soul Beast race had a good relationship because they wanted to develop some forest resources. Now that Bicky directly said that she would give them compensation, it was a pleasant surprise. Moreover, Lin Feng didn't know much about the treasures in the depths of the Star Douluo Great Forest. This time, the race and the Empire met to compensate, so they should give a lot of rare resources. He could use this opportunity to let Lin Feng learn more about things. Thinking of this, Lin Feng suppressed the joy in his heart and said, The Great Xia Empire respects your thoughts. Since the Soul Beast race has chosen not to come out, we won't publicize this matter. We can cooperate in secret. When Lin Feng said this, Daming and Tang San's eyes were a little strange. Because before this, they all knew that Lin Feng's idea was to suppress this news first. Originally, this was a request from their side. Now that the other party had raised it, they even wanted to give them benefits. This dreamy feeling made the two of them feel a little strange. In particular, Lin Feng's seamless switching of ideas really opened their eyes. That's great. Bicky smiled and said, The compensation will definitely be done within a week, and this compensation will definitely not disappoint you. So now, let's talk about the cooperation. The Soul Beasts cooperated with the Great Xia Empire because they wanted to understand this world. They couldn't just sit around and wait for death. On the other hand, they were also doing this for Daming and Xiao Wu. These people belonged to the Soul Beast clan. Not only did they possess great strength, but they were also able to live freely on the continent. The safety of the Soul Beasts would be greatly increased as long as they could rope them in to serve their master. Moreover, it was also very important for them to have a good relationship with the Great Xia Empire. After all, the Great Xia Empire was able to cooperate with the Divine Realm. Using this as a connection point, they would be able to obtain more information about the Divine Realm. This was extremely important to their plan to counterattack the God Realm. On Lin Feng's side, the main reason why he was on good terms with the Soul Beasts was because of their enormous numbers. As long as he could awaken their intelligence and activate his God creation plan, the power of faith would quickly surge towards him. Thinking of this, Lin Feng smiled and said, Then let's start discussing the cooperation. Both sides already had a plan for the cooperation. In the next half an hour, Tang San and Bicky discussed the details and reached a consensus. Finally, after the discussion, Bicky said Alliance Leader Tang, Elder Lin, Lord Beast God said that he can bring you to the hidden location of the Soul Beast clan for a tour. Of course, we also welcome Xiao Wu, Daming, and the rest. This time, they can follow us. Tion had already planned it out. When the time came, he would let Bicky bring Lin Feng and the rest to the new base. Then, they would split into two groups. One group would specially receive Lin Feng, Tang San, and the rest, while the other group would bring Daming, Xiao Wu, and the rest to the Lord's side. As long as they received the Lord's favor, he believed that Daming and Xiao Wu would be happy to join the Soul Beast clan. Lin Feng smiled and said, We can all go with you. I hope that we can understand more about the Soul Beast clan. That's not a problem at all. I will answer all of your questions about the Soul Beast clan. Vicky's face was full of smiles. At this point, the most important task that Tion had given her was half completed. She just had to wait until tomorrow, when she brought Lin Feng and the rest to the new base. Then, her task would be considered complete. Therefore, she was very happy at this moment. Following that, Lin Feng didn't waste any more words. They had already discussed most of the things that needed to be discussed. What they needed to do now was to wait for a day and arrange things in the Great Xia Empire. Then, they would set off for the Douluo Great Forest with Bicky tomorrow. At this moment, Bicky said, "Now that the discussion is over, I need to tell the Lord Beast God this good news. So, I will go back first. I will come to Great Xia City at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to welcome all of you. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow." After waving her hand, Bicky quickly left Great Xia City and flew in the direction of the Douluo Great Forest. Xiao immediately asked, "Feng Gu, what is the Soul Beast clan like? Is the Beast God a real god?" Also, Xiao bombarded Lin Feng with a series of questions. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Aren't you a soul beast yourself? I have never been to those places. How can I know better than you?" The discussion between the two sides this time was mainly about the details of the cooperation. As for the understanding of the Soul Beast clan, it was too time-consuming to talk about, so Lin Feng didn't ask too much. Anyway, they were going to take a look at that hidden place tomorrow. When the time came, Bicky would also explain it to them. They would know very soon. So Feng Gu doesn't know either. Xiao Wu pursed her lips. In Xiao Wu's heart, Lin Feng was an omniscient existence. Of course, this omniscience wasn't really omniscient. It was just a concept. She thought that Lin Feng knew more. Now that she didn't get an answer, Xiao Wu immediately looked at Daming and asked, "Daming, tell me, what is the hidden place of the Soul Beast clan like? And the Beast God?" In response, Daming slapped his forehead. "I suddenly remembered that I still have classes in school. I will leave first." Seeing this, Xiao Wu looked at Tang San. Before she could ask, Tang San also slapped his head. "Look at my memory. There is something I forgot to tell Sect Master Ning. I have to go and talk about it quickly." At the same time, Lin Feng looked up at the sky and said while walking out, "A new noodle restaurant opened in the East City. The taste is good. I will go and try it." Seeing this, Xiao Wu stomped her feet angrily. "Each and every one of them thinks I am long-winded. It really pisses me off." Xiao Wu didn't really want to know about the Soul Beast clan from the three of them. She just wanted to ask. She didn't expect the three of them to run away all of a sudden. It really pissed her off. But soon, Xiao Wu ran in the direction of Lin Feng while shouting, "Feng Gu, wait for me. I want to eat noodles too." A day passed quickly. During this day, Great Xia City was extremely calm on the surface, and everything was as usual. However, in secret, Lin Feng's apotheosis plan had already been prepared. This morning, before Bicky arrived, Lin Feng officially launched the deification plan. For a time, the broadcast, newspapers, and various news channels began to slowly spread about the Marvel family's deeds. These things were actually in the publicity hall of each branch of the Great Xia Alliance, but the transmission efficiency of these things was extremely low. Not many people knew about it. But now, Lin Feng took the initiative to spread it, especially in the style of spreading it with some simple modifications. It was believed that in a few days, the discussion of the Marvel family would become the mainstream of the Douluo continent. During this period of time, Lin Feng would constantly publicize the progress of their experiment to maintain the popularity of the experiment at an extremely high level. In this way, it wouldn't be long before he could be successfully deified. In the time, Lin Feng estimated that it would only take a month at most, because in a month, his rapid breakthrough experiment would achieve great success. At that time, with a month of publicity, the people of the entire Douluo continent would have a qualitative change in the topic of the Marvel family, Thanos, and Lin Feng. With these expectations, Lin Feng and Tang San came to the tea house near the East City Gate and waited quietly. Of course, in addition to them, Thanos also came over to accompany them to the hidden place of the Soul Beasts. The East City of Great Xia City was also the business district. When Bicky first came, she came in from the East City Gate. The east was also the direction of the Star Do Great Forest. Yesterday, Bicky had agreed to meet them in the East City. In this way, in less than half an hour, Lin Feng sensed Bicky's arrival. After that, both parties rushed towards the Great Star Do Forest impatiently after a brief conversation. Along the way, Xiao Wu couldn't hold back the doubts in her heart and asked Bicky all sorts of questions. It was very lively, and to Xiao Wu's questions, Bicky answered them one by one. For example, the general situation of the hidden place, Di Tian, Bear Lord, and the others, and especially the question of whether the beast god was a god. Bicky even gave a very formal answer. Xiao Wu, the beast god isn't a real god. He's the strongest existence in our soul beasts, and he manages us. That's why we respectfully call him the beast god. So that's how it is. Xiao Wu revealed a look of realization. However, Lin Feng asked, then how strong is your beast god? Bicky had just mentioned Di Tian, Bear Lord, and the others. Lin Feng also knew that their beast god was Di Tian, but Bicky didn't elaborate on how strong he was. And Lin Feng was most concerned about his strength. After all, this represented how big of a threat the soul beasts were. If Di Tian's strength was at the god rank, Lin Feng would still have to be polite when he came to their hidden place later. And if Di Tian wasn't strong, Lin Feng could relax a little later. At least, he wouldn't have to be too careful. I don't know the exact strength of the beast god, but he's stronger than the rest of us, Bicky said. Strictly speaking, Bicky's words were equivalent to not saying anything, because Lin Feng didn't get an answer to his question. But at this moment, Lin Feng had a rough guess in his heart. He estimated that Di Tian's strength was at most a demigod. There was a huge rule in Douluo's world, and that was if a soul beast didn't transform at 100,000 years, they wouldn't be able to ascend to the god realm. The deep-sea demon whale king that Lin Feng had killed was in such a situation. It had been locked in place for 990,000 years by the power of the rules, but it couldn't break through the limit of 1,000,000 years. Therefore, Di Tian should be in such a situation right now. Actually, Lin Feng had overestimated Di Tian. Di Tian hadn't reached 990,000 years. He was only at 800,000 years of cultivation. However, because of his species and bloodline, his strength and cultivation didn't match. He was even stronger than the deep-sea demon whale king. But Lin Feng wasn't the same as before. Right now, Lin Feng was at least 5 times stronger than before. Furthermore, Lin Feng could already kill the deep-sea demon whale king back then. Now that his strength had increased again, it shouldn't be a big problem to deal with Di Tian. As he thought about this, Lin Feng didn't ask any more questions. He quickly followed Bicky to the center of the Star Do Great Forest. When everyone flew past the lake where Daming and Erming used to live, Xiao Wu couldn't help but sigh. I haven't been here for a few years, but this place has changed so much. Yeah, I almost don't recognize it anymore. Daming laughed. Back then, Lin Feng had set up a formation here and even transplanted immortal herbs here. The energy density here was much higher than before. In just a few years, the trees here had almost become sentient. There was rich energy everywhere, and many spirit herbs had even sprouted. The place was full of vitality. After a while, I'm going to set up a small house here. I'll come over to play when I'm free, Xiao Wu said with a hint of anticipation. Great Xia City was too busy. Xiao Wu and Tang San didn't have much time to enjoy themselves. Also, Xiao Wu and Tang San had talked about their wedding when they were in Heavendo City. They wanted to get married after the Great Xia Empire unified the continent. However, there were so many big things happening recently. In addition, the empire had just been established. Everything was too busy, so now, the two of them had almost forgotten about their wedding. However, after returning to the Star Do Great Forest today, Xiao Wu's thoughts drifted away, and she thought about this matter. However, now wasn't a good time. Xiao Wu didn't mention it. Instead, she buried it in her heart. Xiao Wu even glanced at Lin Feng when she was thinking about this. She and Tang San were already thinking about marriage. What about Feng Ge? What about him, Rong Rong, Take Shi, Lena, and the others? So many sisters-in-law. Just thinking about it gave her a headache. But then again, if Fenggu really married 3 sisters-in-law, it would definitely be very interesting. Chapter 559. Xiaowu didn't say what she was thinking. She was afraid that Fenggu would beat her up. After lamenting for a while, everyone continued to walk deeper into the forest under Bai Ji's lead. How far is this place from where you guys are hibernating? Xiaowu asked after walking for a while. If they walked any further, they would be out of Xiao Wu and Daming's knowledge. Hence, she wanted to know more. Not too far. With our speed, we'll be there in 10 minutes. Bai Ji smiled as she replied. That's still quite far. We're almost at the northern part of the Star Do Great Forest. Xiao Wu nodded. When she and Daming were in the Star Do Great Forest, they didn't fully understand the Star Do Great Forest. After all, the concept of territory between soul beasts was very important. While Daming and the others were strong in the forest, they weren't invincible. Furthermore, Daming wasn't particularly fond of fighting. Hence, it didn't go too far. They stayed in what humans thought was the core region of the forest. Now, it seemed that they weren't in the core region. At most, they were in the middle region. While Xiao Wu and Bai Ji were talking, Lin Feng frowned slightly. Bai Ji said that it wasn't too far away. With their current speed, they could reach in 10 minutes. That didn't sound right. According to the information that Lin Feng had investigated, that place was at least half an hour away from where they were. But Bai Ji said that it would take them 10 minutes. That didn't sound right. Furthermore, he didn't realize it before. As they got closer and closer to their destination, Lin Feng realized that the direction they were going was a little different from what he had imagined. What did this mean? Was there a trap? At once, Lin Feng became vigilant. After all, they were too far away from their destination. He couldn't help but be on his guard. As he thought about it, Lin Feng didn't speak immediately. Instead, he instantly transformed. Lin Feng and Thanos became clones. Both of them arrived at a large tree 10 kilometers away. After that, Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He quickly rushed to the north. His current destination was none other than the place that he sensed Bai Ji going to. Previously, Lin Feng was thinking that if the soul beasts were friendly and didn't play any tricks, he wouldn't care about that hidden place. But now, there was a problem. No matter what the reason was, even if Lin Feng didn't know the true location, he still had to go and take a look at the current situation, even if it wasn't what he expected. Furthermore, if Bai Ji was purposely pretending to be him, that meant that the soul beast had a huge secret. If it wasn't for this secret, why would she be so careful? So even if it was just for this point, Lin Feng had to take a good look at the situation first. With that thought, Lin Feng rushed at full speed. The journey that should have taken half an hour only took about a minute. Lin Feng arrived in front of a mountain range. After walking for another 30 to 40 kilometers, he would arrive at the place where Bai Ji was previously. But at that time, due to the obstruction of a special array, Lin Feng wasn't very accurate. He only knew the approximate location, which was in the continuous mountain range ahead. And at this moment, what surprised Lin Feng was that he didn't discover anything when he scanned with his spiritual power. But this shouldn't be. Lin Feng was sure that this place was definitely something. Otherwise, Bai Ji wouldn't have stayed here for such a long time. Even if she was pretending, Bai Ji wouldn't choose a place that didn't have any situation to deceive him. If that was the case, wouldn't she be treating Lin Feng as a fool? So at this moment, Lin Feng wasn't discouraged. Instead, he searched more carefully. Soon, Lin Feng found something. Behind the third mountain in front of them, the energy fluctuations there were very different compared to the other places. Illusion array? Or a special concealment array? With that thought, Lin Feng's original body stayed where it was, and his clones slowly moved over. Although Lin Feng had easily found the flaws in the array formation and discovered the nodes, he was still a genius. In fact, it was extremely difficult. Even if a god descended, it would be difficult to find it. The main reason why Lin Feng was so relaxed was that he knew the exact location and was very sure of it. In addition, he had a lot of foundation regarding arrays, especially illusion arrays. Lin Feng understood them very well. Strictly speaking, in the entire Douluo continent, no one knew more about arrays than Lin Feng. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the king of array knowledge. With all these factors added together, Lin Feng could find the location of the array in an extremely short period of time. Of course, finding it didn't mean that it would be easy to enter. There were only two ways to enter the array. One was to use brute force to enter, and the other was to decipher the array. Lin Feng's goal was to find out the situation secretly and not alert anyone. So, he rejected the idea of using brute force to enter. Strictly speaking, there were two options to decipher the array. First, he could decipher part of the array. Lin Feng only had to analyze the array's probing principle, then think of a way to disguise himself to enter safely. Second, he could decipher the array as a whole. This way, the array would be controlled by Lin Feng, and he could do whatever he wanted. Time was tight, so Lin Feng obviously wouldn't decipher the array as a whole. Instead, he quickly observed how the array worked. At this moment, Lin Feng's spiritual power was highly concentrated. His soul power quietly spread outside the array, and he started to probe. If he was an ordinary soul master, he would have already triggered the array's reaction. However, Lin Feng's control of his soul power was too high. Even if he was probing so quickly, the array didn't react at all. At this moment, apart from the myriad Demon King, Di Tian, the Bear Lord, and the rest had already arrived at the new base. They were waiting for the plan to be carried out. Of course, the myriad Demon King was here because he had no choice. His main body was here. As for the new base, he knew what was going on. The myriad Demon King's main body spread across half of the Douluo Great Forest. So, he knew everything that was happening there. Di Tian could even converse with him. Although this ability couldn't compare to Lin Feng's avatar, it was still very good. Lin Feng didn't know anything about this right now. There was only one thing on his mind at the moment, and that was to enter the array formation to see what was going on and whether there was an ambush. As he thought about this, Lin Feng's soul power circulated rapidly. He slowly learned the principles of the array and tested them in his mind countless times. This ability to simulate in his mind was something that Lin Feng had developed after doing so many experiments. Every detail of the array and every trace of his ability was vividly displayed in Lin Feng's mind. In layman's terms, Lin Feng's mind was like a precise calculator right now. He was calculating every possible way to break the array in front of him. This wasn't an easy task. Even if it was just a partial break, Lin Feng estimated that it would take at least half an hour. While he was trying his best to break the array, Lin Feng also had to control Lin Feng and Thanos to follow by Ji and the rest. They had to run towards the so-called hidden location. Under such circumstances, Lin Feng was still very draining on his spiritual power. However, after so much training, Lin Feng's spiritual power was no longer the same as before. Even if he was operating under such a high load, he could still last for more than half a day. Just like that, 10 minutes passed. Bai Ji brought everyone to the base that she mentioned. This was a huge valley. There was a lot of energy in it. Even every breath could slightly increase one's soul power. To be honest, Lin Feng's first impression of this place was, that's right, this must be the hidden location of the soul beasts. The main thing was that this place was too good. The energy density here was so high that it was even better than the cultivation hall in the Great Xia City. If he could modify this place and bring in equipment that could assist in cultivation, he could also use the techniques that Lin Feng had used to make breakthroughs. He believed that creating a titled Douluo within a year shouldn't be a problem. It had to be known that this was a titled Douluo. A few years ago, he was already an incomparably divine and lofty existence. Right now, even though titled Douluo had the highest status in the Great Xia Empire, they didn't have the absolute power that they used to have, even though they were still very powerful. But even so, titled Douluo was still a realm that countless soul masters dreamed of. And now, in Lin Feng's opinion, this was something that could be done with a pair of hands. Although there were many harsh conditions, if news of him being able to become a titled Douluo in a year spread, all the soul masters on the continent would go crazy. Although he had thought so much, Lin Feng was still very vigilant in his heart. At the same time, he also sent a voice transmission to Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the others to remind them to run immediately if the situation was not right. On the other side, Lin Feng was also doing his best to simulate the formation. The situation was better than he had imagined. At most, he would be able to successfully enter in another 15 minutes. At this moment, Bai Ji said to everyone, "Everyone, the hidden location of the soul beast is right in front of us. We welcome all of you as guests." As soon as Bicky finished speaking, she waved her hand, and the forest in front of her suddenly changed into the entrance of a valley. Seeing this, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. This was because he realized that the formation here was the same as the one he had seen on the other side. It wasn't that they were exactly the same, but they were essentially the same. It was just that the formation here was much weaker. Furthermore, Lin Feng realized that this formation was newly built. The foundation of the formation was too new, and the flow of energy was still a little shaky. This meant that this formation had been built not long ago. With this discovery, Lin Feng immediately used it as a blueprint to speed up his analysis. But soon, Lin Feng had no choice but to stop what he was doing. This was because he realized that the beast god, Di Tian, and the bear lord were walking over together. Lin Feng could sense extremely powerful auras from these people. This meant that they were very strong, especially the beast god, Di Tian. He was definitely not weaker than Thousand Dao Lu, Bibi Dong, and the others. In other words, this guy had the strength of a demigod. The others weren't weak either. They were equivalent to title Douluo, who was around rank 98. Facing these people, Lin Feng didn't dare to use his clone to talk to them. It wouldn't be good if he was discovered. Hence, at this moment, Lin Feng switched with his clone. As for his original body, he continued to decipher the formation. "Friend from the Great Xia Empire, welcome to the Valley of Soul Beasts." Di Tian laughed heartily from a distance. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of people came in front of Lin Feng and the others. At this moment, Di Tian called this place the Soul Beast Valley. This was where the soul beasts hid in seclusion. Tang Sen looked at the other party's smiling face and laughed as well. "It's our honor that the beast god brought people to welcome us personally." No matter what happened next, he still had to be polite. "Vicky told me about you guys a few days ago. We also know a lot about the situation in the Great Xia Empire. Your arrival has really brought warmth to us soul beasts. Quick, this way please." Di Tian's personality wasn't that forthright. However, for the sake of the soul beasts, he pretended to be forthright. Of course, this couldn't be considered as an act. In Di Tian's heart, if the relationship between the two parties continued, he would continue to maintain this persona. When the time came, as long as Di Tian's acting was good enough, others would think that he was very forthright. Under Di Tian's lead, the group soon arrived in front of a big tree in the middle of the valley. This was a huge tree that was more than 100 meters tall. The tree trunk was extremely thick and sturdy. Its diameter was estimated to be about 20 meters. At this moment, the trunk of the big tree was hollow. The inside was made into a living room. Under Di Tian's lead, the group arrived at the big tree. There were many fruits and juices on the table. Everyone could eat and drink as they pleased. As soon as they sat down, Bai Ji formally introduced the two parties. "This is Tang San, the leader of the Great Xia Alliance. This is Lin Feng, the elder of the Great Xia Alliance, and also the elder of the Marvel family. This is Thanos, the leader of the Marvel family. And this is..." When Bai Ji introduced Lin Feng and the others, Di Tian and the others stared at them without blinking. After all, after Bai Ji's explanation, these people already knew about Lin Feng and the other situation. At this moment, they just wanted to see what kind of person such a powerful person was. Di Tian could see through Daming, Xiao Wu, and Tang San's strength at a glance. As for Lin Feng and Thanos, Di Tian couldn't see through them at all. Because of this, when he heard about Thanos, he took a few more glances. Soon, Bai Ji introduced Di Tian and the others. "This is Di Tian, the beast god of our soul beasts. This is..." After about a minute, Bicky finally finished introducing everyone. At this point, both sides nodded at each other. Chapter 560. While Di Tian was observing Tang San and the rest, Tang San and Lin Feng were also observing each other. Currently, the two strongest powers on the entire Douluo continent were the Great Xia Alliance and the Soul Beasts. Therefore, this meeting had a special meaning. Fenggu, there shouldn't be any ambushes around. However, the energy density here is too high. It's comparable to our cultivation hall. Tang Sen secretly transmitted his voice to Lin Feng. There was a tinge of astonishment in his voice. After all, the cultivation hall was the crystallization of their wisdom. They used mimicry, soul tools, soul power condensation, and many other techniques. After more than a year's worth of work, they were able to create all kinds of auxiliary cultivation machines. Now, the soul beasts actually had a place similar to the cultivation hall. Tang Sen was still a little surprised. It's a little strange. There should be a special formation. In addition, there should be a soul stone mine here. That's why the energy density is so high. Learn it. When the time comes, the cultivation hall's effects will be even better. Lin Feng transmitted his voice back. Although the soul beast formation was also a formation, the way it was set up and the flow of energy within it was different from that of soul masters. If they could learn it, the cost of building the cultivation hall would be greatly reduced. Originally, the construction of auxiliary facilities was too slow. In addition to the high cost, they could only open one in Great Xia City. But now, if they could learn this formation, they could open cultivation halls all over the continent as long as they had sufficient energy. This was a huge project that would benefit the entire world of soul masters. Although this was also one of the methods the Great Xia Alliance used to recover contribution points, it was still very constructive overall. Oh yes, ever since the Great Xia Alliance was established, contribution points had been renamed to Great Xia coins. After all, contribution points were too small a term. After changing it to Great Xia coins, the value of contribution points increased. We soul beasts have been in seclusion for many years, and we haven't left the Douluo Great Forest for a long time. If we offend you later, please forgive us, Tian said politely at this moment. In fact, before Lin Feng and the others had arrived, Tian had already known that Thanos was very strong. However, in his opinion, Thanos was at most at the pinnacle of level 99 Douluo. Although this kind of expert was powerful, he didn't look down on him at all. But now, when he really saw Thanos, he realized that he had underestimated him. How was this Douluo at the peak of level 99? His strength was unfathomable, and the more he looked at him, the more shocked he became. No wonder he was qualified to negotiate with the people of the celestial realm. At this moment, if the person standing in front of him was a god, Tian would believe it. Although he wasn't afraid in his own nest, they couldn't do anything to Thanos. Thus, in this sort of situation, Tian did not look down on them in the slightest. Instead, he treated them as equals. Most importantly, Tian and the others needed to find out more about the celestial realm through the Great Xia Empire. Thus, it was necessary to build a good relationship with them. You're too polite. Tang Sen smiled and said, we don't know much about soul beasts, so please forgive us later. Just like that, the two sides started to discuss cooperation in this friendly atmosphere. During this period, the main talking people were Tang Sen and Tian. As for the others, they stood silently at the side. At most, they would be the tools when the two of them needed them. Although the two of them were the main characters, Lin Feng could still sense that almost everyone's attention was on Thanos. It couldn't be helped. Thanos gave them too much pressure. After the two sides discussed a few points, Tian said, Alliance Leader Tang, we have already discussed the compensation. We will provide enough resources for 10 people to become titled Douluo. Apart from that, we will also provide a batch of spirit herbs and soul crystals. These things are very useful to titled Douluo. I believe that these are enough to express our sincerity. It had to be said that if all the compensation that Tian had provided was implemented, it would be very impressive. This was especially so for the soul crystals and spirit herbs. Although spirit herbs couldn't be compared to immortal herbs, their effects were still very strong. There are also soul crystals. Those were the core of soul stone mines, and their energy was far greater than that of high-grade soul stones. After a soul master absorbed them, their cultivation speed would increase tremendously. Tang Sen also knew how valuable they were. At this moment, he hurriedly smiled and said, "This is too valuable. Your conditions aren't that big of a deal. We don't deserve such serious compensation. Alliance leader Tang, you don't have to treat us as outsiders. Soul beasts have been in seclusion for so many years. Although our strength hasn't increased by much, we still have plenty of resources. These things are harmless to us." Di Tian was very sincere. Seeing this, Tang Xin didn't refuse anymore. He smiled and said, "Since that's the case, I will represent the great Xia Empire to thank all of you." Di Tian waved his hand, and Bai Ji immediately understood. She ran to a house 50 meters to the east and used her soul power to carry a pile of things over. Lin Feng only needed one look to know that these were the compensation that Di Tian was talking about. The pile of things exuded powerful energy undulations. Bai Ji quickly placed them on the table in the middle. Tang Xin didn't waste any time. He waved his hand, and this pile of resources was kept in his storage-type soul tool. This scene didn't surprise Di Tian and the others. They knew about soul tools. In the following period of time, there was an exchange of benefits, and the relationship between both parties became more and more cordial. Di Tian brought up one proposal after another. For example, he mentioned developing the Star Dough Great Forest, planning a region for soul beasts, and so on. Tang Xin mentioned all these things, whether they were now or in the future, as long as they were related to the Star Dough Great Forest. On Di Tian's side, he was very interested in these things. They had a very pleasant conversation. As they spoke, Tang Xin revealed his important plan. The Great Xia Empire actually has an idea for soul beasts. We want to awaken low-tier soul beasts' spiritual intelligence. After he said this, Di Tian, Bai Ji, the Bear Lord, and the others were all stunned. Di Tian hurriedly asked, "Alliance leader Tang, how old are these low-tier soul beasts? What do you mean by awakening their spiritual intelligence?" Di Tian naturally knew what he meant by awakening their spiritual intelligence. However, because it was too important, he was afraid that what Tang San meant by awakening their spiritual intelligence was different from what he understood. Hence, he confirmed it again. Tang San could also understand Di Tian's feelings right now. He immediately said, "This soul beast is estimated to be 1,000 years old. As for awakening their spiritual intelligence, it means that soul beasts will possess intelligence." After hearing Tang San's affirmation, Di Tian and the others were astonished. Awakening their spiritual intelligence sounded simple, but it could only be achieved by 10,000-year soul beasts. Furthermore, 10,000-year soul beasts' spiritual intelligence had only just awakened, and they were still very ignorant. Normally, a 30,000-year soul beast's spiritual intelligence would reach the level of a human child's. It was because it was so difficult for soul beasts to awaken their spiritual intelligence that Di Tian and the others were very astonished after hearing Tang San's words. "Is this true?" Di Tian was a little agitated as he asked. If 1,000-year soul beasts could awaken their spiritual intelligence, it would be great news for the entire soul beast species. This was because soul beast cultivation efficiency would increase greatly after they gained their spiritual intelligence, and their strength would increase greatly. If this continued for a few hundred years, the overall strength of soul beasts would increase greatly. It was because he thought of so many things that Di Tian urgently hoped that Tang San's words were true. Tang San didn't keep Di Tian in suspense. He laughed and said, "Of course it's true. However, it's still in the experimental stage. It's estimated that it will take half a year before it can be developed in large quantities." Tang San had already expected Di Tian and the others to be astonished. This was because he was also astonished when Lin Feng told him about this matter yesterday. After all, he knew how difficult it was for soul beasts to awaken their spiritual intelligence. However, Lin Feng said that the Marvel family had already found a way, but they still needed some time to experiment. Tang San didn't doubt this at all. This was because Feng had never lied to him before. In fact, there wasn't any need to experiment. Lin Feng only needed to continuously inject his life energy into the soul beasts, and they would be able to form potions that could awaken their spiritual intelligence. However, this would take too much time. Lin Feng had more important things to do right now. This was why he gave a deadline of half a year. Half a year isn't a problem at all. As long as we can awaken 1,000-year soul beast spiritual intelligence, 10 years, 100 years, we can afford to wait. Di Tian said excitedly. Half a year was just the blink of an eye for soul beasts. It wasn't much at all. That's right. Half a year isn't much at all. Bai Ji couldn't help but interrupt. Alliance Chief Tang, you've hidden this matter a little too well. You didn't even reveal anything when we were in Great Xia City. Bai Ji and Tang San had talked for a long time along the way, but they hadn't said anything about this. He had hidden it too well. Tang San laughed and said, "This is a special surprise for all of you." Because of Xiao Wu, Tang San had a much better impression of Soul Beast than Lin Feng did. He was even joking at this moment. However, Tang San quickly continued, "This method of awakening spiritual intelligence is very precious. We need a lot of experience to research it. When the time comes, we can't provide it to the soul beasts for free. You'll need to exchange all kinds of resources for Great Xia coins, and then we'll use Great Xia coins to do the transaction." Using Great Xia coins for the transaction was Lin Feng's special request. It might seem like a simple sentence, but as time passed and the soul beasts started to use Great Xia coins on a large scale, it would be difficult for the Great Xia Empire to decline, even if they wanted to. That's what we should do. As long as we can produce something that can awaken soul beast spiritual intelligence, cultivation resources won't be a problem at all. Di Tian hurriedly said. The soul beasts have been entrenched in the Douluo Great Forest for tens of thousands of years. Although they spent most of their time in hibernation, the resources in their territory could be said to be as plentiful as the hairs on a cow. Di Tian felt that it was very worth it to use these resources that weren't very useful to them in exchange for the future of the soul beasts. That's great. I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation. Tang Sen laughed and continued to discuss with Di Tian and the others. At the same time, Lin Feng's main body had finished deciphering the formation. Of course, Lin Feng didn't recklessly let his main body enter the formation. That would be too dangerous. He wasn't that foolish. As he thought about it, Lin Feng waved his hand and an avatar was formed. After that, he controlled his soul power to form a protective barrier. The soul power on the barrier used a special soul power undulation to emit a faint yellow light. Just like that, Lin Feng didn't encounter any obstacles as he was enveloped by this light. He entered the formation without any obstruction. At this moment, Lin Feng was fully focused. He controlled his avatar to move slowly, while his main body was quite a distance away from the formation. This was to ensure his safety. This formation covered an extremely large area. Even if his avatar entered the formation, it wouldn't be able to pass through it easily. In order to avoid being discovered, Lin Feng walked very slowly. In the end, it took Lin Feng a full minute to walk out of the formation's area of effect. He was completely inside the formation. At this moment, if Lin Feng had to use a phrase to describe his feelings, he could only say that he was enlightened. Previously, when he looked from outside the formation, there was a continuous mountain range in front of him. It looked very normal, and he could even walk into the mountain range. However, after entering the formation, the mountain range in front of him instantly disappeared and turned into a huge valley. This valley was beyond Lin Feng's imagination. It stretched for dozens of kilometers. In the outside world, he had never seen such a huge valley. The valley was filled with towering trees. The most eye-catching thing was in the middle of the valley. There was a very special lake there. The lake water was filled with life. The life force even had a sacred feeling. It was completely different from Bicky's. Lin Feng felt that if his immeasurable flower could absorb this lake water, it would definitely cause a special change. However, Lin Feng didn't have the slightest impulse at this moment. After all, he had just entered and didn't know anything about the situation here. Therefore, he still needed to investigate. With that thought, Lin Feng stood in place and slowly spread out his spiritual power. He didn't immediately spread his spiritual power toward the lake water. After all, that place was too special. Who knew what he didn't know about it? Therefore, Lin Feng only spread his spiritual power from the periphery to the center bit by bit. In just 1 or 2 seconds, Lin Feng's expression changed drastically, because in his spiritual power, he discovered that all the surrounding trees were alive, and their auras were of the same origin. This meant that this group of trees was actually a person or a soul beast. They were hidden too deeply. When Lin Feng's spiritual power spread out, he didn't care at all. He thought that they were just ordinary trees. The other party seemed to have discovered him, so there was a fluctuation. This allowed Lin Feng to discover the fact that these trees were alive. And just as Lin Feng noticed this, Myriad Goblin King was also suddenly awakened. He said with a face of disbelief, "Someone actually broke in." Chapter 561. When the Myriad Demon King sensed Lin Feng's spiritual power, he was stunned. It was too foreign. He had never seen this spiritual power before. It definitely wasn't by Ji and the others. Because of this, he was able to sense the abnormality immediately. But at the same time, he was shocked. This was the place where his master was sleeping. It was protected by extremely strong formations. Not only were there concealment formations, but there were also defensive formations. Because of these formations, this place was extremely safe. For tens of thousands of years, no one had discovered this place. No soul beasts or soul masters have been able to enter this place. But now, someone had actually snuck in without making a sound. It was simply too shocking. The Myriad Demon King immediately extended his spiritual power in the opposite direction. He wanted to check the situation of the formation. But at this moment, Lin Feng also sensed the situation. He immediately retracted his spiritual power. At the same time, his clones scattered and turned into several fallen leaves. They drifted in all directions with the wind. Lin Feng knew that he had been sensed. Besides, he didn't know much about this space. Therefore, it was best for him to hide immediately. It had to be said that Lin Feng made the right decision, because when he turned into a leaf and drifted away, a middle-aged man in green robes appeared where he was originally. This person frowned, his eyes filled with vigilance as he scanned his surroundings. His soul power was pulsing around him. He exuded a powerful aura. It was clear that he was ready to fight. But very quickly, a look of suspicion appeared in his eyes. Where was he? Why didn't he sense anything? Was it an illusion? Thousand Goblin King was sure that the strange spiritual power just now came from here. But now, even though he reacted quickly, he still couldn't sense anything. He even controlled the formation to search, but he couldn't sense anything. What was going on? Did someone extremely strong come in? Or was he wrong? No matter what, even if he was wrong, there had to be a reason. The Myriad Demon King was sure of that. While the Myriad Demon King was searching, the Bear Lord noticed that the Myriad Demon King's avatar didn't look right. He seemed a little nervous. With that thought in mind, he hurriedly asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Myriad Demon King was the sole Beast Clan's eyes in the Star Doe Great Forest, so Bear Lord immediately knew that something was wrong when he saw the expression on his clone's face. However, no one knew what the problem was other than the king of myriad goblins. But very quickly, the Thousand Goblin King sent a message to everyone. Someone broke into the formation and wanted to use their spiritual power to investigate the master. When I discovered him, he immediately disappeared. I'm searching right now, but I can't find anything. It seems like he disappeared into thin air. To be honest, Myriad Goblin King didn't even know who was spying on them. Was it a soul beast? Or a human soul master? Or was it someone from the God Realm? After all, the God Realm had previously cooperated with the Great Xia Empire. Now that the Great Xia Empire had sent people over, it was possible that the Great Xia Empire and the God Realm had secretly come to exterminate the Soul Beast clan. But that didn't make sense. They'd built a fake base far away and called it Soul Beast Valley. No one knew where the Lord was. For tens of thousands of years, no one had discovered this place. Now that something had happened, there had to be some other reason. In just a few seconds, the Thousand Goblin King sent a message to Di Tian and the rest about the situation. At that moment, everyone was stunned. Then, Many of their expressions changed. After all, this concerned the Lord's safety. He was the Soul Beast clan's greatest hope. If not for the fact that the 1,000 Goblin Kings said that there wasn't much danger, they would have rushed back without caring about anything. Even so, the changes in everyone's expressions were obvious. Tang San stopped talking and asked, "What happened?" He was a little confused. They were clearly having a good discussion, but all of a sudden, the expressions of the people behind Di Tian changed. Even Di Tian was stunned. Because of this sudden change in atmosphere, Daming and Xiao Wu were on their guard. Tang San even sent a message to Lin Feng. "Fenggu, something doesn't seem right." Lin Feng replied, "It's nothing big. With Mr. Destroy around, nothing will happen." Lin Feng's control of space was very strong now. Not only could he teleport alone, but he could also bring everyone away without any resistance. Because of this, Lin Feng didn't panic at all. Furthermore, Di Tian was the only one who was slightly stronger among the bunch of soul beasts in front of him. If a fight really broke out, Lin Feng could easily suppress these people. What he was more concerned about was the situation in the formation. The lake water was very rich in life, energy, and attracted him. If he could make good use of the resources there, it would be very useful to Lin Feng. "It's nothing big. There's a disturbance in the forest, so I need someone to go and deal with it." Di Tian turned around and said to everyone behind him, "Ziji, Bai Ji, and Yao Ling, stay here. The rest of you, go and deal with it." These words were said on the surface, but Di Tian had already instructed everyone to go back and investigate the matter. As for himself, the discussion with the Great Xia Empire was very important, so he needed to stay here. It would be too outrageous if he left as well. Di Tian also suspected that this matter might have something to do with the Great Xia Empire. After all, it was too coincidental that something happened to his master the moment they arrived. At this moment, he sent the Bear Lord and the rest to investigate. If this matter really had something to do with Tang San and the rest, they wouldn't be able to leave without an explanation. No matter how strong Thanos was, Di Tian still dared to fight him with his home ground advantage. In fact, Di Tian was thinking too simply. He knew that Thanos was very strong and could even be compared to a god. However, that was outdated news. After his recent research, Lin Feng had strengthened his 1,000 trickster ruler several times. Compared to the past, its strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. Right now, Di Tian thought that he could fight against Thanos, but it was just wishful thinking on his part. Yes, the Bear Lord and the rest acknowledged before they quickly left. Their movements were extremely fast, so fast that Tang San didn't even have time to say anything before these people ran away. This is how it is in the forest. Not long after, there will be situations where soul beasts fight for territory. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Di Tian laughed. For someone of Di Tian's level, it was very easy for him to multitask. On the surface, he was discussing things with Tang San, but in fact, he was secretly communicating with the Myriad Demon King and the rest to control the situation. If something really happened that the Bear Lord and the rest couldn't control, he would go immediately. For this, he wouldn't hesitate to offend the Great Xia Empire. After all, their master was their foundation. If their master was in danger, they had to protect him. It's fine, it's fine. Come, let's continue talking." Tang San laughed. He could roughly guess that things weren't as simple as Di Tian said. Perhaps something big had happened. However, if Di Tian and the rest weren't willing to talk about it, Tang San didn't ask too much. After all, they weren't very familiar with each other. They needed time to get to know each other. Furthermore, Tang San was different from Lin Feng. He didn't know much about soul beasts, let alone formations. Otherwise, if he knew more, Tang San would ask more questions out of curiosity or out of a willingness to help others. After this small incident, the Soul Beast Valley quickly resumed their negotiations. At the same time, outside the formation, Lin Feng squinted his eyes and waited quietly. Earlier, he didn't pay much attention to the people standing behind Di Tian. There was no need to. However, when this group of people were communicating with each other, Lin Feng realized that the Myriad Demon King, whom Bai Ji had introduced earlier, had soul power undulations that were very similar to the middle-aged man he had seen in the formation. Combined with the situation earlier, Lin Feng could roughly guess that the two of them were the same person. The Myriad Demon King had a clone-type soul skill. Its effects were outstanding, and its area of effect was very large. Lin Feng didn't know what the Myriad Demon King's true form was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so surprised if he knew that the Myriad Demon King was a plant-type soul beast. After all, plant-type soul beasts had very strong life forces. It was very easy for them to use a part of their bodies to create clones. Something happened when the Great Xia Alliance came. I think it's very likely that they're working with the God Realm. I think it's very likely. If you ask me, we should go back and capture those people. Then, we can interrogate them properly. That's too dangerous. The Great Xia Alliance is very strong. If we do that, we'll be playing with fire. At this moment, the Bear Lord and the rest were rushing towards the formation as they chatted. Lin Feng heard all of this. This was because when Lin Feng's true body was rushing over, he left many clones behind. These clones were like listening devices, and he heard everything the Bear Lord and the rest said. Lin Feng didn't feel anything about this. This was because this was very normal. They didn't know each other at all. It was normal for them to be suspicious. However, Lin Feng managed to extract a lot of information from these people's conversations. Firstly, these people's personalities were different. Lin Feng divided them into two groups based on what they said. The Bear Lord and the Scarlet King had bad tempers, and they liked to fight. The others were more gentle and more conservative. Secondly, which was also a more important point, Lin Feng realized that the soul beasts didn't seem to be on good terms with the God Realm. They hated the God Realm. It was because of the cooperation between the God Realm and the Great Xia Empire that the Bear Lord and the Scarlet King said such things. However, the God Realm and the Soul Beasts had nothing to do with each other. How could they be related? Lin Feng remembered that there wasn't a Divine Beast clan in the original novel. There was also very little description of the gods. Lin Feng couldn't understand this. Actually, it was a pity. Lin Feng knew that Douluo's world had a few novels. However, because the later novels weren't very well written, coupled with the fact that he often ate the settings and his work, he didn't have time to read them. Now that he thought about it, the soul beasts and their grudges with the God Realm might be the content of the later novels. Of course, it was a pity, but Lin Feng didn't think too much about it. This was because he knew very well that knowing the plot would only affect his decisions. However, in the face of absolute power, these were just empty words. Therefore, Lin Feng only needed to increase his own power. He needed to increase his power to the strongest level. At that time, no matter what he faced, Lin Feng wouldn't panic at all. Thinking about this, Lin Feng's main body waited quietly outside the formation. As for the avatar, it transformed into a leaf and silently listened and sensed within the array formation. He was afraid of being discovered, so he couldn't use his spiritual power to check quickly. However, after turning into a leaf, he could use his ears to listen and get a lot of information. After about 3 minutes, the Bear Lord and the others who were rushing all the way arrived in front of the formation. Without hesitation, they used the soul power in their bodies and passed through the formation. They came to the valley. How is it? Did you find him? They immediately met up with the Thousand Goblin King and asked about the situation. No, the Thousand Goblin King shook his head. I ran over immediately after sensing the spiritual power. However, that person seemed to have evaporated into thin air. I didn't find any clues. That's impossible. Even if he teleported away, there should be space ripples. Through the formation, there should be soul power ripples. There's no way he could have disappeared without a trace. The Bear Lord was in disbelief. As he spoke, he led everyone towards the place where the Thousand Goblin King sensed Lin Feng's presence. However, after 3 minutes, everyone looked at each other with ugly expressions on their faces. In the past 3 minutes, they had scoured the entire place, but they didn't find anything. Even after checking the formation, they still didn't find anything. Let's split up and search, the Bear Lord said. That guy definitely hasn't left yet. We just need to search the formation carefully and search everywhere. We'll definitely be able to force him out. In such a short period of time, There was no way that someone could have left without triggering the formation. Therefore, the Bear Lord quickly grasped the crux of the matter. Lin Feng was in the formation. The Bear Lord's method was very good. If Lin Feng's main body was in the formation, he would have been discovered by the Bear Lord. However, this was only an avatar. It could be made into an inanimate object. When it was attacked, it could even imitate a normal leaf being attacked. It wouldn't matter if it was crushed. At that time, Lin Feng only needed to withdraw his spirit power. After the Bear Lord and the others left, Lin Feng could extend his spiritual power and take over the avatar again. Therefore, the Bear Lord's method didn't work on Lin Feng at all. Chapter 562. Under the Bear Lord's plan, everyone spread out within the formation and began to search the area, especially Thousand Goblin King. He created dozens of clones and was very efficient in searching. However, Lin Feng's clones were like ordinary leaves and they couldn't find him at all. Just like that, 3 minutes passed very quickly. Bear Lord and the others had searched the entire valley, but they still found nothing. Soon, the few of them gathered together and started discussing again. Did someone really come here? Could it be that we sensed wrongly? Yeah, our valley hasn't been discovered for tens of thousands of years. There's nothing special now. How could someone come in? Just now, I checked the formation. There's nothing wrong with it. It's been working normally. This is the formation that Master personally set up. Even if a god from the god realm came, it would be difficult for him to come in. I think we sensed wrongly. If Thousand Goblin King was telling the truth, then the person who barged in must still be in the valley. However, they had searched the area carefully just now but found nothing. The formation didn't sense anything either. This person couldn't have disappeared into thin air. Because of this, and because of their trust in the formation, everyone came to the conclusion that Thousand Goblin King had sensed wrongly. Although the probability wasn't high, they were more willing to believe that Thousand Goblin King sensed wrongly than the formation was wrong. When Thousand Goblin King heard everyone's words, he started to doubt himself. Was he really sensed wrongly? It seemed possible. After all, he didn't see the intruder at all. Thinking about this, Thousand Goblin King told Tian about their situation and guesses through his clones. At this moment, Tian and Tang Sen were almost done discussing the cooperation. After hearing Thousand Goblin King's words, they were very happy. After all, they had already discussed the cooperation. Tian was looking forward to the future. If there was any bad news now, he would be very unhappy. Now that he knew that he sensed wrongly, Tian's expression was much more relaxed. Tang Sen also noticed the change in the details, but he didn't say much and just continued to talk about the cooperation. Lin Feng, on the other hand, could tell from the reactions of these people that this was definitely the enemy's lair. Furthermore, the lake in the middle might contain something extremely important to the entire soul beast race. Otherwise, Tian and the others wouldn't be so nervous. At this time, if Lin Feng wanted to continue to explore the situation, he would have to bear a certain risk. Lin Feng could still bear this kind of risk because of his incarnation, but Tang San and Xiao Wu were very likely to be implicated. Therefore, in order to prevent this from happening, they had to wait until they left the Star Do Great Forest. It just so happened that both sides were almost done with their discussion. Lin Feng transmitted his voice to Tang San. Xiao San, it's about time. Let's go back after we're done. Actually, before they came, Lin Feng and Tang San said that if they had the chance, it would be best to take a look at this hidden place. However, that was under the premise that it was really their lair. At this time, Tian and the others weren't being honest at all and had brought them to another place. Therefore, Tang San and the others didn't have to take a look at it all. It was better to go back as soon as possible. After hearing Lin Feng's words, Tang San didn't object at all and sped up the discussion. All along, when he was with Lin Feng was the one who made the decisions. Although Tang San was puzzled, he didn't object at all. This was because he knew very well that Feng Ji's decisions were always correct. There wouldn't be any problems. As he thought about this, Tang San immediately sped up the discussion. At most, he would need another 10 minutes to finish the discussion. On Tian's side, he could also feel Tang San's deliberate increase in speed. This wasn't a good sign. In fact, Tian was still a little worried about today's discussion. After all, the God Realm had just cooperated with the Great Xia Empire. If the God Realm really came to destroy the soul beasts, they would be inviting a wolf into their house. However, for the sake of Daming and Xiao Wu, this risk was worth taking. For this, Tian had also made preparations. For example, this newly built Soul Beast Valley and formations. These were Tian's confidence. But now, this so-called confidence had been disturbed because of the matter with his lord. Furthermore, their original plan was to think of a way to separate Daming and the others from Tang San after the discussion. However, looking at the current situation, they were going to leave. This wouldn't do. Tian and the others had taken such a huge risk. If they didn't even have the chance to be alone with Daming now, it would be a loss. Tian's original plan was to bring Daming and the others to his master's side and then receive his blessings. However, because their cooperation with the Great Xia Empire was too harmonious now, Tian's expectations were slowly decreasing. Right now, it was more or less enough for him to be able to speak with Daming and the others alone. As long as the Great Xia Empire could do half of what they wanted, the Soul Beast strength would increase tremendously. Furthermore, this increase would be very long-term. As time passed, this advantage would be slowly magnified. Finally, it would become an unstoppable trend. When that happened, they would be able to take advantage of this trend to advance their counterattack on the God Realm. As he thought about this, Tian expressed his goodwill during the discussion. He wanted everyone to stay for a meal. He also secretly called the Bear Lord and the others over through the Myriad Demon King. He was prepared to carry out his previous plan. However, with Lin Feng's instructions, Tang San was less tactful and more forceful. Even though Tian's intention to stay for a meal was very obvious, Tang San wasn't moved. In this way, 5 minutes passed quickly, and the two sides discussed the cooperation matters. This cooperation had more than 10,000 words. It included the development of forests, the trade of soul tools, experiments to increase the intelligence of soul beasts, and so on. In any case, as long as this cooperation was carried out perfectly, both parties would be able to achieve prosperity in a year's time. Of course, this prosperity didn't just refer to wealth. It also included all other aspects. It was a comprehensive indicator. Alliance Leader Tang, I wish us a pleasant cooperation in advance. Tian stood up and smiled as he shook Tang San's hand. Actually, according to Tang San's speed, the discussion should have been completed in 3 minutes. He purposely dragged it out. In the end, he took 5 minutes. During this time, the Bear Lord and the others were already nearby. They had even prepared their speech. Pleasant cooperation. Tang San laughed and said, I believe that in a few years' time, soul beasts will have equal status on the continent of Douluo. Regardless of whether it was soul beasts or soul beasts, people on the continent still viewed them in a different light. After all, soul beasts and humans had been opposing each other for countless years. This was a form of oppression from their worldview. When Tang San's mother revealed her identity as a soul beast, everyone on the continent wanted to kill her. This was especially so for the Martial Soul Hall, who had been chasing after the two of them. Although the main reason was that the Martial Spirit Palace had added fuel to the fire behind the scenes, the general trend of the continent still accounted for a large part of the reason. Because it was very difficult to change this perception, Tang San didn't give an exact time. He only gave a vague estimate of a few years. After all, he couldn't guarantee anything. He could only wait and see when the time came. I hope so. Tian smiled and nodded. Tang San didn't continue the conversation. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, Today, the Great Xia Empire has successfully formed a strategic alliance with the Soul Beasts. This is something that needs to be celebrated. However, we still have many things to deal with in the alliance. Once we're done, we'll pay you a visit. They had completed their main goal today. The rest could be done in the future. As for Daming and Xiao Wu, they had come along because of Lin Feng's request. On the other hand, they wanted to come because of their own curiosity. However, their curiosity wasn't because they yearned for bloodlines. Instead, they were just like humans. They were simply curious about their own race. Unknowingly, Perhaps the Great Xia Empire's ideology was too deeply rooted in their hearts. Or perhaps they were too influenced by Lin Feng. In any case, when the two of them looked at the world, they didn't see themselves as soul beasts anymore. Instead, they saw themselves as humans. Di Tian didn't know about this. For his perspective, Xiao Wu and Daming were both soul beasts. They should have the same mentality as soul beasts. However, the truth was the exact opposite. Even if Di Tian's plan went smoothly, Xiao Wu and Daming might not be affected. Just as Lin Feng was about to leave, the Bear Lord and the others returned to the Soul Beast Valley. Before they even got close, they said loudly, "Our luck is pretty good. We actually encountered a batch of 1,000-year spirit fruits on our way back. We're in for a treat this time. Yes, the Great Xia Empire's people are here today. We have to treat them with these spirit fruits. If they eat these fruits, their strength will increase greatly." Even though they were talking among themselves, their voices could be heard in the Great Hall. Lin Feng and the others could hear them. Before anyone could react, the Bear Lord and the others arrived in the Great Hall. Bai Ji went up to them and smiled. The Beast God has just finished his discussion with the Great Xia Empire's envoys. This batch of fresh spirit fruits is just in time. Haha, I see. The Bear Lord laughed heartily. Alliance Chief Tang, we specially picked these spirit fruits for all of you. Furthermore, we prepared a banquet yesterday. With these spirit fruits, I guarantee that all of you will eat to your heart's content. Soul beasts like them naturally didn't know how to cook. For this reason, Bai Ji specially bought many ingredients from the restaurants in Great Xia City. Using soul power could preserve the freshness of the dishes. If they were used to set up a banquet, the taste wouldn't be too bad. This, Tang San immediately transmitted his voice to Lin Feng. "Feng, what should we do? These people are too enthusiastic." If only Di Tian came to ask them to stay, Tang San could still reject them. However, they had just shaken hands, and the atmosphere was very good. Right now, a group of people was enthusiastically asking them to stay for a meal. This was the first time that Tang San had encountered such a situation. He was at a loss for what to do. Lin Feng also frowned. He didn't understand why this group of people wanted them to stay for a meal. What was their goal? Weren't they still going to leave after the meal? What was the difference if they left later? Because he didn't understand this point, Lin Feng was a little confused about Di Tian's goal. Speaking of which, his understanding of soul beasts was still too little. He didn't know their goal at all. However, Lin Feng couldn't be bothered to waste more time here. Coincidentally, more than half of these people had returned. The array formation was very empty. There wasn't anyone left. Right now was the best time for Lin Feng to take action. Therefore, he needed to send Tang San and the others away quickly. As he thought about this, Lin Feng said, "We won't eat today. We'll have plenty of time to eat in the future." The Bear Lord was about to speak when Lin Feng looked at Di Tian. He continued, "We're going back this time. On one hand, we want to quickly settle this matter. On the other hand, we're at a crucial point in our research on the medicine that can awaken soul beast intelligence. We can't be out for too long." Lin Feng knew that Di Tian attached great importance to the awakening of soul beast intelligence. After all, this concerned the future of the entire soul beast race. Therefore, at this moment, Lin Feng was using this to pressure them. They should be smart enough to move aside. That was the case. When Lin Feng finished speaking, Di Tian's expression changed. He laughed and said, "So the experiment is at a crucial point. In that case, we should go back as soon as possible. We'll leave this banquet open. You can have it the next time you come." Right now, it was a very simple math problem. Di Tian wanted Tang San and the others to stay. At most, he wanted to rope in Daming and Xiao Wu. However, if he let them go back and finish their research on the medicine of intelligence, he would be able to rope in countless powerful individuals for the future. Although Di Tian felt that these people were making up excuses to go back, he felt that it shouldn't be the case. After all, it was just a meal. It was very normal. At most, they would be a little more enthusiastic. There was no need for them to make up excuses to leave. However, Di Tian didn't expect that Lin Feng was really making up an excuse to leave. Moreover, the person who snuck into the formation was not an illusion. It was Lin Feng who was sitting in front of him. If Tian knew about this, he would probably be very angry. However, it was very difficult for Tian to know about this. This was because Lin Feng was very careful. Even if he was discovered, he wouldn't reveal any clues about his identity. Therefore, it was very difficult to guess who he was. Chapter 563. After using the experiment to pressure Tian, the group quickly left the Soul Beast Valley without encountering any resistance. Afterwards, Bai Ji sent them to the periphery of the Star Do Great Forest on behalf of the Soul Beasts. Originally, Bicky had wanted to send them directly to Great Xia City. However, this was truly too passionate. Tang Sen hurriedly persuaded her, and only then did Bicky drop the subject. Just like that, they rushed towards Great Xia City under Bai Ji's fervent gaze. On the way, Xiao Wu asked agitatedly, "Feng Gu, can soul beasts and humans really coexist in the future?" Xiao wanted to ask this question when Tang San was talking to Tian. However, it wasn't the right time, so she held it in. Now that they had left the Star Do Great Forest, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. "Of course," Lin Feng teased. "Xiao Wu, did you think that I was painting a pie in the sky for all of you?" Of course not. I just feel like I'm dreaming." Xiao Wu quickly shook her head. From the beginning to the end, Lin Feng had never gone back on his word. His words came true every time. However, soul beasts and humans were no longer enemies. They were equal. This was too much of a shock. That was why Xiao Wu asked this question. Tang Sen also had the same thought. Although the words came out of his mouth, to be honest, he also felt that this matter was too shocking. If humans and soul beasts were equal, his mother wouldn't have been forced to her death by the Thousand Sun disease. This isn't a dream. It's just the right path for development. Lin Feng said, "As long as the living beings in the world aren't fools, they will eventually become unified and work together to improve. What the Great Xia Empire needs to do is to speed up this process and maintain it. Eventually, the entire world will become stronger." Because of the limitations of this era, many people didn't understand Lin Feng's thinking. But that didn't matter, because Lin Feng was slowly changing the world with absolute momentum. The first to change were Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Dai Mu Bai. With them as the center, this change was radiating to everyone around them. In less than a year's time, not to mention changing the worldview of the entire continent, but at the very least, the people of the Great Xia Alliance would be greatly changed. So our Great Xia Alliance is actually so great. Xiao Wu praised. The power of the Great Xia Alliance had always been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. However, Lin Feng had never told them about the essence of it. Now that they heard about it, they felt that it was very magical. Lin Feng stroked Xiao Wu's head and smiled. "Work hard for the Great Xia Alliance. It won't be long before all of our names will be recorded in the annals of history." In fact, what they had done so far was enough to leave their names in history. It was just that Lin Feng had higher requirements. I'll work hard." Xiao Wu nodded. Just like that, the few of them discussed as they flew towards Great Xia City. It only took them 10 minutes to arrive at Great Xia City. "You guys go back first. Mr. Destroy and I have something to do. We'll be back later." At the city gate, Lin Feng didn't continue to follow them in. Instead, he stopped in his tracks. Hearing this, Tang San and the others didn't say much. They just nodded and said, "Feng Gu, you guys come back early. You'll have to preside over today's meeting." The cooperation with the Soul Beasts was considered a secret cooperation. According to the results of their previous discussions, Tang San and the others didn't intend to publicize it. But before that, some preparations still had to be done. So this afternoon, the higher-ups of the Great Xia Alliance had to hold a meeting to discuss these actions. As for these preparations, Tang Sen wasn't very good at controlling the details, so Lin Feng had to preside over it. "No problem. I'll rush back before the meeting." With that, Lin Feng and Thanos left. There was still about 3 hours before the meeting. This was more than enough time for Lin Feng. Not long after the two of them left Great Xia City, Thanos instantly disappeared. Lin Feng turned into soul power and dissipated into the air. From the beginning to the end, this Lin Feng was just an ordinary clone. The main reason why he wasn't discovered was because this clone of Thanos had been beside him the entire time. He had used his soul power to conceal it. Now that the clone's task was completed, he wasn't needed anymore. 3 minutes later, Lin Feng's clone and his main body met. At this moment, Lin Feng was multitasking. On one hand, he was using his clone to observe the situation around the formation. On the other hand, he was also listening to all the sounds within the formation. Most importantly, Lin Feng had left the clone in the Soul Beast Valley to monitor every move of Tion and the others. Actually, he wasn't monitoring them. More accurately, he was eavesdropping. After all, Tion was also a demigod. He wasn't weak at all. If Lin Feng were to openly peek at Tion, he might be able to sense it. Therefore, for safety's sake, Lin Feng only eavesdropped on their conversation. However, Tion and the others seemed to prefer to use voice transmissions. Lin Feng didn't hear many clues. They were mainly discussing matters regarding the intelligence of soul beasts. Lin Feng didn't hear any of his words of concern. After a while, Lin Feng sensed that Tion and the others were rushing over. At this point, Lin Feng knew that he didn't have much time left. The valley in this formation was the final base of the soul beasts. It was obvious that Tion and the others were more inclined to stay here. Therefore, when they came over later, the defenses here would be strengthened. Lin Feng would be in greater danger. As he thought about it, Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He used his clone in the formation as a target, and his clone immediately teleported. Swoosh! In the next second, a leaf appeared in Lin Feng's hand. His clone had already entered the formation. Although this formation was strong, its spatial defenses were weaker. This was why Lin Feng was able to barge in so easily without being discovered. At this moment, Lin Feng's clone wasn't in Thanos' appearance. It would be too easy to be discovered. Therefore, Lin Feng's clone was dressed in black. He was like a night walker. Although transforming into a human would make him an obvious target, he had no choice but to do so. After all, if he wanted to unleash his abilities, he had to ensure that he was in human form. Furthermore, there were requirements for his size. Otherwise, no matter how strong his soul power was, it would be useless if he couldn't circulate it. Therefore, his human form was the best choice for Lin Feng to ensure his abilities. At this moment, Lin Feng's clone was very secretive. After entering, he didn't act rashly. Instead, he continued to observe. At this moment, because he knew that the trees were living creatures, Lin Feng extended his spiritual power again. He deliberately avoided the trees. This way, the myriad demon king wouldn't be able to discover him. Just like that, Lin Feng's spiritual power quickly extended to the entire valley. In an instant, other than the lake in the middle, the situation of the valley formed a map in Lin Feng's mind. TSK, TSK, TSK. After sensing the situation in the valley, Lin Feng couldn't help but click his tongue. There was no other reason. It was too luxurious. In this valley, the concentration of energy was extremely high. Furthermore, there were spiritual herbs, spiritual fruits, and the like everywhere. There was even a soul stone mine. Furthermore, these mines were covered by a formation. It seemed to be the formation base of this huge formation. The formation base and the formation were linked to the energy in the valley. Using this soul stone mine to provide energy, the formation was activated, and the formation filled the valley with energy. The three formed a balanced cycle. From there, it became a perpetual motion machine. Actually, things weren't that exaggerated. However, the creator of this formation was still very smart. Even if Lin Feng was the one who set up this place, he would have to think about it for a long time. Tion? He shouldn't be. It wasn't that Lin Feng looked down on Tion. It was just that Tion didn't give him the feeling that he wouldn't be able to set up such an intricate formation. He should be another soul beast. After connecting the dots, Lin Feng felt that there should be another strong soul beast in this valley. As for the location, he couldn't find it even after scanning more than half of the valley. Therefore, the most likely place was the lake in the middle. As he thought, Lin Feng's avatar turned into a gust of wind and flew towards the lake in the middle. This wasn't a short distance. The main reason was that Lin Feng had to concentrate his spiritual power to prevent any other situations from happening. Just like that, after spending a few minutes, Lin Feng finally arrived at the edge of the lake. At this moment, even if Lin Feng just took a casual breath, he could feel the rich life energy in the lake. The life energy in the lake was too strong. If he stayed by the lake for a long time, not only would it be beneficial to his cultivation, but it would also weaken his cultivation bottleneck and increase his lifespan greatly. However, Lin Feng didn't care about all this. What he cared about was his martial soul, the immeasurable flower. At this moment, the immeasurable flower seemed to have a life of its own. It was excited by the life energy in the lake. However, Lin Feng didn't follow his instincts to absorb it. After all, there might be a strong soul beast in the lake. Therefore, Lin Feng was very careful. At this moment, he released his spiritual power and slowly spread it towards the center of the lake. This lake was circular, and there was an island in the middle. On the island, there was a towering tree that was more than 100 meters tall. Lin Feng could feel that the strong soul beast was near the tree. Gradually, Lin Feng's spiritual power was only 1,000 meters away from the island. 500 meters, 300 meters, 100 meters. At this moment, Lin Feng suddenly felt a special soul power undulation. This wave of energy was like a protective shield, covering the entire island in the middle of the lake. Most importantly, this shield was very hidden. No matter how careful Lin Feng was, his spiritual power still came into contact with the shield when he wasn't prepared. Instantly, Lin Feng retracted all his spiritual power and retreated. However, he was still a little too late. Just as he retreated, the lush green tree on the island in the middle of the lake suddenly emitted a bright silver light. Not good. Master is in danger. The myriad demon king's body appeared almost instantly as he rushed towards the lake. At the same time, Di Tian and the others who were discussing in the Soul Beast Valley were also rushing over. Seeing this, Lin Feng knew that he was too slow. In addition, he sensed that Di Tian and the others were running over. He didn't retreat anymore. Instead, he rushed towards the lake. At this moment, Lin Feng's thoughts were very simple. Since he had been discovered, he didn't have to hide anymore. He started to absorb the life energy in the lake. This was also Lin Feng's only chance as long as he didn't fall out with the soul beasts. Otherwise, it would be too late for Lin Feng to do anything when Di Tian and the others returned. Furthermore, he had another motive for absorbing the life energy. He wanted to force the soul beasts to reveal their trump card. This life energy should be the foundation of the soul beasts. He wanted to see how strong the soul beasts would be after he destroyed their foundation. This time, as long as Lin Feng could find out everything about the soul beasts, he would have achieved all his goals. After all, the soul beasts seemed to have a feud with the godly realm. It was necessary to find out more about the soul beasts. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing pure life energy. The immeasurable flower has been strengthened. Experience plus 129, 4815 ding. Detected that the host is absorbing pure life energy. The immeasurable flower has been strengthened. Experience plus 348, 3478 ding. Detected that the host is absorbing pure life energy. The immeasurable flower has been strengthened. Experience plus 234, 0639. As Lin Feng continued to absorb life energy, the system also gave him a notification that his experience points were increasing. Lin Feng was a little surprised by this. After all, he could gain experience points while his martial soul was strengthened. This was too profitable. These notifications refreshed very quickly. In just 2 seconds, Lin Feng had gained more than 30 million experience points. Furthermore, Lin Feng realized that there was a small bracket behind the immeasurable flower column on his personal interface. There was a percentage inside. Martial soul. Immeasurable flower, 2. 37%. With a thought, Lin Feng knew that this percentage represented a special evolution. As long as he could reach 100%, Lin Feng's immeasurable flower would receive a qualitative upgrade. Seeing this, Lin Feng was slightly excited. He transformed into his human form and started to absorb the life energy in the lake. At this moment, because of Lin Feng's appearance, the Thousand Goblin King immediately noticed him. Die! He shouted and charged towards Lin Feng. At the same time, two huge vines turned into spirals and intertwined towards Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng did not even turn his head. He only waved his hand. A ball of fire flew in front of the vines and suddenly exploded. In an instant, the fire formed a sea of fire in the air and burned the vines to ashes. Even the Thousand Goblin King was stopped in midair. Moreover, the sea of fire seemed to have a mind of its own as it spread towards the Thousand Goblin King. Just by touching it, the Thousand Goblin King was burned in pain. He knew that he was no match for Lin Feng. This man in black strength was completely beyond his imagination. Chapter 564. As a plant-type soul beast, Thousand Goblin King was most afraid of lightning and fire. Facing the sea of fire that Lin Feng threw out, he couldn't attack from the front. Furthermore, the flames were like small snakes as they charged toward him. Damn it! Thousand Goblin King cursed and quickly retreated. He could feel that the flames were fatal to him. If he didn't retreat, his condensed body would be burned to ashes in an instant. But as he retreated, he also had a thought. The ground under Lin Feng's feet suddenly shook. In the next second, countless vines shot towards Lin Feng like sharp swords. At this moment, Lin Feng was absorbing the life force in the lake, threatening his master's safety. Hence, Thousand Goblin King had to force Lin Feng to retreat. The vines were very fast and reached Lin Feng's feet in an instant. However, just as the vines were about to reach Lin Feng, a flame shield suddenly appeared around him. This shield appeared out of thin air. When the vines hit the shield, there was not the slightest ripple. They directly turned into black smoke and dissipated into the world. Seeing this, Thousand Goblin King was furious, but he felt helpless. Lin Feng countered him too much. In terms of strength, the difference between them was huge. Thousand Goblin King couldn't stop Lin Feng at all. Even now, he didn't know who had snuck in. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing pure life force. Martial Soul Immeasurable Flower has been strengthened. Experience plus 427-4901. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing pure life force. Martial Soul Immeasurable Flower has been strengthened. Experience plus 448-2974. At this moment, Lin Feng knew that time was of the essence. He was absorbing the life force in the lake with all his might. His experience was increasing rapidly. He looked at the progress of his martial soul. It was already 10%. At this speed, he would be able to evolve his martial soul in at most a minute. However, right at this moment, Lin Feng suddenly discovered that he was actually unable to absorb the slightest bit of life force. On the contrary, there was a huge suction force in the lake that seemed to want to suck away his energy. Seeing this, Lin Feng hurriedly cut off the connection with the lake. This was because he saw that the big tree on the island in the middle of the lake was emitting a bright silver light that illuminated the entire lake. At the same time, the entire lake emitted a green light. The hidden array formation had been activated, and a powerful aura rose up. This aura was the strongest among all the people Lin Feng had ever seen. Even the sea god, perhaps because they were separated by a realm wall, did not give Lin Feng such a strong feeling. As for Bai Shui and Bai Luo, perhaps because they were born and raised in the god realm, Lin Feng did not feel that they were very strong. They were probably on par with Qiandao Lu and the others. And Lin Feng was sure that the expert in the silver light was stronger than Bai Shui and Bai Luo. As for how much stronger he was, Lin Feng didn't know because they hadn't actually fought. Not good. Master has been woken up. Just as the silver light shone brightly, Di Tian and the others' expressions changed drastically. They rushed over with all their might. The myriad Demon King's clone said anxiously, "That guy's absorbing the life energy in the lake of life. This is the most important thing for Master to recover his strength. If it's all absorbed, it'll be bad. Master has already woken up. He probably won't let that guy succeed. Myriad Demon King, hold him back." We'll be there soon. We have to kill this guy. The group was already determined to kill this guy who stole Master's life energy. After all, this had never happened before. Their nest had been stolen, and Master's sleep was disturbed. He deserved to die. Suddenly, the few of them sped up. They didn't care about the depletion of soul power at all. They only wanted to travel faster. At this moment, Lin Feng also sensed that Di Tian and the others were quickly approaching. He had calculated that at this speed, Di Tian and the others would be back in half a minute at most. And he only had 20 seconds to test the waters. The last 10 seconds were the emergency time that he used to deal with accidents. After all, soul beasts were too mysterious. If they had some tricks up their sleeves that he didn't know about, he would be in trouble. Therefore, to be safe, Lin Feng had to leave in advance. At this moment, the formation in the lake sealed the life energy. The myriad Demon King was also harassing Lin Feng. Lin Feng couldn't absorb the life energy in a short period of time. And this was what Lin Feng didn't want to see the most. It wasn't easy for him to see the direction of his martial soul's evolution. How could he give up? In addition, he still had to test the existence on the island. As he thought about this, Lin Feng's soul power surged. In the next second, a black lotus flower condensed in his hand. He threw it towards the center of the island. At the same time, a pair of black wings appeared on his back. Evil aura circled around them, causing the surrounding space to distort. They were very powerful. When the black lotus flower flew out, Lin Feng flapped his wings and rushed towards the island. These soul skills were the embodiment of Lin Feng's extreme control over his own soul skills. Whether it was the external form or the internal energy composition, it was an extremely powerful structure. It could perfectly unleash his strength. Break! As Lin Feng shouted in his heart, the black lotus flower hit the protective barrier of the island. In the next second, the lotus flower turned into a black ball of light. It dispersed in all directions. The spatial power within it was turbulent, and even the space around the protective barrier was shattered. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Feng passed through the formation and arrived at the center of the island. As the saying went, nothing ventured, nothing gained. This island in the lake was the most important place in this valley. Furthermore, from the protective measures and the current situation, the most important thing and the strongest soul beast of the soul beast race was inside. Lin Feng couldn't check the situation in the center because of the formation. Now that he was inside, he had a chance to see clearly. But at the same time, Lin Feng was a little doubtful. Isn't the reaction of the strong person on this island a little too slow? Logically speaking, this kind of strong person with God-rank strength should have an extremely fast reaction. However, after a few seconds, this strong person didn't take the initiative to respond. As for the situation of sealing the life force, it was more like a spontaneous action of the formation. Could it be that the strong person is still asleep? Because he's asleep, so his reaction is so slow? At the moment, this was the only possibility Lin Feng could think of. Of course, thinking was just thinking. Lin Feng's movements weren't slow. The life force was sealed in this island, so when Lin Feng rushed in, he directly bathed in this sea of life force. At this point, Lin Feng didn't have the time to care about anything else. Before he was attacked, he immediately summoned the immeasurable flower and wantonly absorbed the life force on the island. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life force. The immeasurable flower martial soul has been greatly strengthened. Experience plus 32932271. Ding. Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life force. The immeasurable flower martial soul has been greatly strengthened. Experience plus 41184730. Ding. Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life force. The immeasurable flower martial soul has been greatly strengthened. Experience plus 37643752. When he was absorbing at the periphery of the lake, the amount of life force was relatively small, and the experience was only a few million. But now, in the center of the island, the experience was increasing by tens of millions. And in a short 3 seconds, his immeasurable flower's evolution greatly increased. Martial soul. Immeasurable flower, 28, 37%. In the outside world, the myriad demon king's eyes were about to pop out. The life force was used by his lord to recover his strength. All these years, because his main body was here, this valley had always been under his care. Most of the life force was also due to him. Now that he saw it being sucked away just like that, the myriad demon king hated Lin Feng to the core. However, because of the difference in strength, and because the formation on the island in the middle of the lake was automatically activated, he couldn't enter at all. His lord had been asleep for so long and was still in the process of waking up. In fact, he had already woken up. However, his lord couldn't attack. To be precise, his lord couldn't attack with his full strength. Although the black-clothed man was powerful in the myriad demon king's heart, his lord was definitely stronger than the black-clothed man. After all, his lord was the dragon god. Back in the god realm, he was also an extremely powerful existence. If he attacked with his full strength, this guy would definitely die. But the problem was that he couldn't attack because after the dragon god led the soul beasts to war with the god realm, his lord brought them here to escape. During this time, the god realm had been searching for his lord's whereabouts. If his lord used his full strength, the god realm would instantly discover them. At that time, they would be attacked by the experts of the god realm. And if his lord didn't use his full strength, Lin Feng was too powerful, and his lord wouldn't be able to chase him out. Therefore, at this moment, there was only one way to chase Lin Feng out, and that was to wait for Di Tian and the rest to return. Because of the restraint, the myriad demon king couldn't deal with Lin Feng at all. But if Di Tian and the rest attacked together, no matter how strong Lin Feng was, he wouldn't be able to resist. Therefore, at this moment, the myriad demon king's clone was beside Di Tian and the rest, quickly explaining the situation in the formation. On the small island, Lin Feng was wantonly absorbing life energy, and his experience points were increasing rapidly. After about 10 seconds, Lin Feng glanced at the interface. Martial soul, immeasurable flower, 79, 37%. Experience points, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 7, 2, 6, 7, 8. His martial soul had already increased to 80%, and his experience points had also reached 11. 2 billion. It was enough for Lin Feng to upgrade one of his soul rings to the million-year level. Right at this moment, Lin Feng realized that the silver light above the lake had suddenly retracted. In an instant, the silver light condensed in front of the big tree in the center of the island. It was a human-shaped silver light figure. As countless silver lights gathered, a human figure slowly took shape. The first thing that appeared was a head of long silver hair. Because of the energy fluctuations, the long hair was spread out and even floated in the air, giving off a beautiful feeling. Following that, a pair of purple eyes met Lin Feng's gaze. They were very calm and didn't seem angry because Lin Feng had absorbed life energy. Looking down, the tip of her nose was perky, her cherry-like lips and her exquisite facial features were combined together. It was simply a masterpiece of the creator. Her figure was also very round, and her breasts were perky. If Xiao Wu saw this S-shaped figure, she would definitely be very envious. With such an exquisite appearance, even Lin Feng was stunned when he saw it. What a beautiful lady, especially her special aura, which made Lin Feng sigh. However, the moment she appeared, all the life energy in the surroundings gathered towards her, and Lin Feng couldn't absorb any at all. That's where you're wrong. You're beautiful, but you can't steal my life energy. This is the key to Lin Feng's martial soul's breakthrough. At this moment, in Lin Feng's heart, this life energy had automatically been divided into his assets. Although it was a little overbearing, Lin Feng wanted to evolve his martial soul. So what if it was a little overbearing? After all, the Great Xia Empire had contributed a lot to the cooperation with the soul beasts. It could even be said that they had contributed a lot. At this moment, Lin Feng was collecting interest by doing this. With that thought, Lin Feng directly attacked the silver-haired lady. He wanted to break her control and let him absorb the life energy. However, this was the soul beast territory after all, and Lin Feng was only here with an avatar. This lady easily dodged his attack and continued to lock down the life energy, not letting Lin Feng absorb it. After attacking a few times, Lin Feng realized that this lady was too fast. If he didn't use his full strength, he wouldn't be able to catch her, let alone stop her from locking down the life energy. At this moment, it was not long before the safe time that Lin Feng had set for himself. He had to leave, or he might be blocked. Although this was only Lin Feng's avatar, because it had absorbed a large amount of life energy, Lin Feng was afraid that the avatar would collapse and disappear, so he had to protect this avatar. With that thought, Lin Feng prepared to leave. But at this moment, he saw more than 10 billion experience points on the interface. That's it. Lin Feng knew that this lady's method of locking down the life energy was to control the array on the island. If Lin Feng could burst out with a huge amount of energy in an instant, he could make the array ineffective in a short time. This way, the life energy would not be locked down. And if Lin Feng broke through to a million-year soul ring, he could make good use of that power and completely paralyze the array. Furthermore, Lin Feng's control of energy was extremely strong, coupled with his strength. Even if he broke through to a million-year soul ring, he would be able to control this burst of energy without spilling out at all. This way, Lin Feng wouldn't have to worry about his identity being exposed. With that thought, Lin Feng didn't hesitate and directly spent 10 billion experience points to strengthen one of the soul rings on the immeasurable flower to the million-year level. In an instant, a huge amount of energy erupted from Lin Feng's body, and the red 100,000-year soul ring in his body suddenly turned bright gold. In the next second, Lin Feng condensed this ball of energy and directly blasted it towards the surroundings of the small island. Swish! Accompanied by a huge energy shock wave, the array on the small island suddenly lost its effectiveness. Seeing this, the silver-haired lady was stunned, her face full of disbelief. Chapter 565. Lin Feng's soul ring had broken through to the million-year level, which was a powerful force that could break the rules. And this kind of power was basically impossible to see in Douluo's world. This was because only after reaching rank 100 and becoming a god would one have such powerful strength. Facing such a huge energy attack, the silver-haired lady didn't dare to block it at all. She immediately shifted the power of the formation and used all her strength to isolate this attack. This was exactly what Lin Feng wanted. When the power of the formation was absorbed on a large scale, the formation's lock-on life energy was weakened by a lot. At this moment, the energy in Lin Feng's body surged wildly, rapidly absorbing the surrounding life energy into his body. In order to absorb the life energy faster, Lin Feng even split the 1,000 trickery ruler into thousands of clones and filled every inch of space on the small island. After all, time was of the essence, and Lin Feng needed to use all methods to absorb life energy. Also, the power of this formation was extremely strong. Even if he used the energy of his million-year soul ring, he wouldn't be able to break it for long. In addition, Tian and the others were already very close, so Lin Feng didn't have much time left. At this moment, as Lin Feng absorbed with all his might, his immeasurable flower's evolution percentage rapidly increased, and his experience points also increased rapidly. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life energy. Martial Soul Immeasurable Flower has been greatly strengthened. Experience points plus 623584432. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life energy. Martial Soul Immeasurable Flower has been greatly strengthened. Experience points plus 583456621. Ding! Detected that the host is absorbing a large amount of pure life energy. Martial Soul Immeasurable Flower has been greatly strengthened. Experience points plus 646999634. Lin Feng was in the center of the life energy, and his absorption speed was much faster than before. The immeasurable flower's evolution percentage was also increasing rapidly. 85%, 90%, 95%, 99%, 100%. Finally, after absorbing a large amount of life energy, Lin Feng's immeasurable flower's evolution percentage reached 100%. At the same time, the silver-haired lady had already blocked Lin Feng's attack and reactivated the formation to seal the life energy. In the outside world, Tian and the others had also arrived near the array formation. They were about to enter the valley. Seeing this, Lin Feng didn't even have time to check on his martial soul. He immediately cut open the space and left the island in the middle of the lake. Then, his body glowed as he quickly passed through the formation and teleported to his main body. After that, Lin Feng didn't waste any time. He quickly dispersed his clones, and his actual body left the Great Star Dough Forest. After all, the Great Xia Empire had just reached an agreement with the Soul Beasts not too long ago, expressing their strategic cooperation. If Lin Feng was discovered, then this cooperation might be directly ruined. So for safety reasons, Lin Feng should leave here as soon as possible. Lin Feng's main body teleported all the way and quickly arrived at Grand Xia City. At this moment, within the array formation, the silver-haired woman stood silently in front of the tree in the middle of the island. She stroked the tree trunk with one hand without making the slightest sound. Behind her, the myriad Demon King, Tian, and the others were all kneeling with one knee on the ground. Their faces were filled with anxiety. This time, they didn't protect their master well and allowed her to awaken from her slumber. Furthermore, they lost a lot of life force. This was a huge mistake on their part. We didn't protect her well. Please punish us, Master. Tian took the lead and said, even though they had a good reason for going out this time, and it was even for the future of the soul beasts, they didn't protect her well. This was a fact, and they couldn't refute it. Hearing this, the silver-haired woman didn't say anything. She only continued to stroke the tree trunk and sank into her memories. Her name was Guyuna, and she was once the dragon god of the god realm. To be precise, she was a part of the dragon god. The dragon god was the king of all beasts, the true master of all soul beasts and divine beasts. It had strength that surpassed the godly king and was extremely powerful. However, it was also the main reason for the chaos in the god realm. The dragon god was arrogant and unruly, and it even led the divine beasts to fight against the other gods. In the end, the dragon god's ambition exploded, and it wanted to unify the god realm, resulting in the Great War of the god realm. This large-scale war affected the entire god realm. In the end, the 5 godly kings joined forces and led countless gods in the god realm to defeat the dragon god. After that great war, the gods suffered terrible losses. However, the dragon god also died in battle. Its divine sense and divine soul were all shattered. However, the dragon god's life force was too strong. With its incomparably powerful ability, it was able to split into 2, becoming the Golden Dragon King and the Silver Dragon King. The dragon god's abilities were also inherited by the 2 dragon kings, but they were scattered. The Golden Dragon King was more like a warrior. He inherited the dragon god's powerful physical abilities. Not only was he extremely strong and invulnerable, he also had unparalleled speed. As for the Silver Dragon King, he inherited the dragon god's elemental power. He could control water, fire, earth, wind, light, and darkness at the same time. These 7 elemental powers made him an extremely powerful mage. However, the people of the god realm weren't jealous. When the dragon god split, they also attacked with all their strength. In the end, the Golden Dragon King was directly killed. Everything was erased, leaving behind only his divine power, which was sealed in the God Realm Committee. As for the Silver Dragon King, she was a mage after all. During the battle, she found an opportunity to break through space and enter the space-time turbulence to escape with her life. It was because of this battle that the God Realm was severely damaged. Countless gods died. Even now, the God Realm had only just recovered. Since that battle, the God Realm Committee had issued an extremely harsh divine punishment. That was no beast in the lower realm was allowed to ascend to the god realm. All the beasts' divine positions were also abolished. The rule that beasts on the Douluo continent couldn't break through to 1,000,000 years came from this. The Silver Dragon King, who is now the silver-haired woman Guyuna, came to the Douluo continent through the space-time turbulence and then lived in seclusion until now. She carried not only hatred, but also the hope of the entire soul beast race. After all, the god realm had directly sealed all the advancement paths for beasts. This meant that all the beasts in the lower realm, even if they reached the peak of their strength and were clearly one step away from eternal life, or even if they had the ability to take another step further, could only wait for death in the end because of the rules. To the god realm, this was to prevent the chaos from happening again. It was for the stability of the god realm. However, to the soul beast race, it was simply too unfair. Therefore, in order to break this unfairness, Guyuna had been accumulating strength and fighting to achieve this goal. Today, because of Lin Feng, she woke up early, and her injuries hadn't completely recovered. Moreover, a lot of the life force in the Lake of Life had been sucked away, which meant that the time she needed to recover her strength would increase again. However, compared to this, Guyuna was more concerned about Lin Feng at this moment. This was because he was too powerful. This wasn't the god realm. It was really puzzling that she could meet such a powerful existence in the Douluo continent. Just as Guyuna was thinking, behind her, Tian and the others saw that Guyuna was ignoring them, and they became even more nervous. After all, their lord had been asleep for too long. Now that she was suddenly awakened and suffered such great losses, they didn't know what would happen. Guyuna turned around just as everyone was letting their imaginations run wild. Her face was calm, and her pleasant voice rang in everyone's ears. Everyone get up. Today's matter isn't your fault. That person's strength isn't something that you can deal with. I estimate that he should have reached rank 100. What? Rank 100? How is that possible? We've heard that there are no soul masters above rank 100 on the continent. Could it be that someone from the god realm has come? The moment Guyuna's words fell, everyone was shocked. None of them doubted the words that came out of their lord's mouth. It was because of this that they were incomparably shocked. That was rank 100. Although it was much easier than reaching the million-year level for soul beasts, it was still an extremely difficult thing. Moreover, after reaching rank 100, it meant that one could ascend to the god realm and even condense a deity position in the future. Now that such a powerhouse had appeared in the soul beast clan's hidden place, it was simply too shocking. At the same time, they were also incomparably puzzled. What exactly went wrong? They had been hidden from the world for tens of thousands of years and had never been discovered. Now that something like this had happened, it was simply too sudden. It shouldn't be someone from the god realm. Otherwise, it wouldn't be him alone today, but a group of people. Ever since the last war in the god realm, the gods of the god realm were incomparably fearful of the soul beasts, especially Guyuna, who had escaped. If she was discovered, the god kings of the god realm might personally descend to the world to kill her. Therefore, because of this reason, no one thought that Lin Feng was someone from the god realm. But our hidden place is so hidden that no one has discovered it for countless years. How did someone sneak in today? In fact, there was one point that no one mentioned, and that was the problem of the array. This array was personally set up by their lord. Because of the array's protection, they were able to hide for so long. But today, there was actually no movement from the array at all. It was simply too abnormal. At this moment, Guyuna said, "Just now, I had a close combat with the black-robed man. Although the battle was very short, I can see that the other party's ability is extremely special. His explosive power is also extremely strong. My array should have been destroyed by him violently." As she spoke, Guyuna's divine sense scanned the array around her. In her opinion, the array she had set up was extremely powerful. Even a god would find it difficult to break it. The black-robed man most likely broke in by force. However, just as she finished speaking, her divine sense had already scanned the entire array. Guyuna was slightly stunned and asked, "Which one of you fixed the array?" Myriad Goblin King coughed and said, "Lord, there was no movement from the array at all. Because of this, we didn't discover it until now. In fact, everyone's thoughts were the same as Gu Yun's. Their array was so powerful that it was impossible for anyone to break in silently. However, Lin Feng sneaked in easily. From the beginning to the end, he did not trigger the array's alarm. It was like an invisible slap to everyone's face. How is this possible? Gu Yun's eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, her divine sense scanned the array many times. However, no matter how she checked, the array was still standing there. There was nothing wrong with it. It was too unbelievable. This formation was something that Gu Yun had created using the power of many different elements, as well as the power of laws. In theory, even a level 2 god would find it difficult to break in by force. Even if a god king were to descend, he would be discovered by the array. It was because of the array's strength that Gu Yun could sleep at ease. But now, her formation had been easily broken by an unknown being. This was simply too shocking for Gu Yun to accept. In addition, the person came here only to absorb vitality. Other than that, he did not do anything else. All of these added up made Gu Yun very curious about Lin Feng. Thinking about it, Gu Yun said, "When I was sleeping, I felt that there were many things happening on the continent." Tell me in detail. When Di Tian was sleeping, he would be awakened by powerful energy waves. Gu Yun's strength was even stronger. It was obvious that she had also sensed this. However, Gu Yun was injured and needed to recover. She could not wake up at will. That would interrupt the recovery process and take a long time. Therefore, under normal circumstances, unless there was a great danger, she would not wake up. It was clear that a great danger had already occurred. Even their home had been stolen. Gu Yun needed to quickly understand the situation on the Douluo continent. Only then could she make the right decision. After hearing Gu Yun's words, Di Tian immediately looked at Bicky and said, "Bicky, report the situation on the world to the Lord." Although Bicky had already told them about the situation on the Douluo continent, they were not very eloquent. Therefore, it was better for Bicky to tell them. Yes, Bicky nodded. Then, she immediately explained the situation on the Douluo continent to Gu Yun. 10 minutes later, the shock in Gu Yun's eyes could not be concealed. The God Realm was actually collaborating with an empire in the lower realm. The most important thing was that the cooperation was a success. There were man-made soul rings, soul beasts that gained intelligence, and something called a cell phone that could communicate from thousands of kilometers away. Were these things real? Why do they sound so dreamy? It was mainly because these things were too magical. Even though Gu Yun was very knowledgeable, she was still very shocked. This was because these things were unbelievable even in the God realm, let alone in the lower realm. If the item that could allow soul beasts to gain intelligence was really created, the strength of the soul beasts would increase tremendously in at most 1,000 years. After hearing these things, even Gu Yun could not suppress the excitement in her heart. She said, "We must build a good relationship with the Great Xia Empire. We must strive for the medicine that can allow soul beasts to gain intelligence in advance." Yes, Di Tian and the others nodded in agreement. Chapter 566. In fact, after hearing Bicky's words, Gu Yun had thought about something very serious. The man in black who had invaded today should be Thanos from the Great Xia Empire. After all, from the news, Thanos was the only one on the entire Douluo continent who had such strength. However, after thinking about it carefully, that shouldn't be the case. On one hand, when the man in black first invaded, Di Tian and the rest saw that Thanos was in the Soul Beast Valley. He couldn't have come over. On the other hand, the Great Xia Empire had just agreed to cooperate with the Soul Beasts. Both sides were on good terms, so why would they invade? In Di Tian's opinion, Thanos Overlord was only a little stronger than him. Thanos Overlord was still a little bit away from reaching level 100. During the battle with Gu Yun just now, Gu Yun had to use the power of the entire formation to barely block that powerful attack. Thanos definitely couldn't exert such a powerful strength. So to sum up, the black-clothed man should be a hidden powerhouse. However, Gu Yun and the rest were wrong. The first point was still acceptable, But the second point was ridiculous. After all, from what Lin Feng knew, they should think that the Soul Beast Valley was where the Soul Beasts lived in seclusion. As for the Lake of Life, who knew? On the third day, Di Tian and the rest thought that Lin Feng's energy attack, when he broke through with his million-year soul ring, was his true strength. In fact, Lin Feng couldn't unleash such a powerful attack unless he fused with his avatar and unleashed his full strength. However, Gu Yuna and the rest didn't know this. Right now, Gu Yuna and the rest had to consolidate their cooperation with the Great Xia Empire. They had to speed up the experiment of unlocking the intelligence of soul beasts. Furthermore, Gu Yuna wasn't in the mood to continue sleeping after such a big thing had happened. She had to take charge of the situation. After all, the Douluo continent was going through a huge change that hadn't happened in 10,000 years. If they didn't handle it well, the soul beasts might be in trouble. Gu Yuna also had to investigate that hidden powerhouse. At the very least, she had to find out some basic information about that powerhouse. She also needed to relocate the hidden grounds of the soul beasts. After all, that powerful being had discovered this place and easily broken through the spell formation. For safety reasons, Gu Yuna had to relocate and strengthen the spell formation. To be honest, Gu Yuna didn't think that she would be discovered. She guessed that the hidden expert was not from the God realm and did not know about the dragon god. Therefore, even if she was discovered, it should not be a big problem. However, to be on the safe side, it was better to be fully prepared. While the soul beasts were busy, Lin Feng had already arrived at a courtyard in Grand Xia City. He didn't go to the Great Xia Palace immediately because the evolution of his martial soul was more important than the meeting. At this moment, Lin Feng first calmed down the surging power in his body. Lin Feng only looked at the system interface after he had recovered to his peak condition. Name: Lin Feng Martial Soul. 1000 Trickster Ruler, Immeasurable Flower, Evolvable, Soul Power. Level 90,000 Tricks Ruler Soul Rings. Special Soul Skill. Avatar Bloodshadow Shark King. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Spatial Smash God Bestowed Soul Ring. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Sharpness God Bestowed Soul Ring. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Paralysis God Bestowed Soul Ring. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Life Absorption Deep Sea Devil Whale King. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Deep Sea Domain Immeasurable Flower Soul Ring. Snow Lotus. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Life Bloom Ghost Head Predatory Spider. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Shadow Bind Armored Giant Bear. 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Armor Demonic Bear, Transformation Raging Flame, Devil Monkey, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Raging Sea of Flames Netherworld Civet, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Netherworld Body Lightning Falcon, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Thunderbolt Strength Wind Dragon, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill. Martial Soul True Body Chinko Blood Shadow Beast, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Teleportation Soul Skill 2. Avatar Swap Soul Bone. Wind Dragon Left Leg Bone, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Hathis Soul Skill 2. Wind Invisibility Chinko Blood Shadow Beast Skull, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Spatial Imprisonment Soul Skill 2. Blood Fiend Blood Shadow Shark King Right Leg Bone, 1,543 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Spatial Traversal. Soul Skill 2. Berserk Shark Claw Demon Ape Left Arm Bone, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Space Rending / Soul Skill 2. Apal Deep Sea Devil Whale King Torso Bone, 1,000,000 years. Plus, Soul Skill 1. Sea's Breath Soul Skill 2. Fury of the Sea Experience. 35341726778 Faith. 32. His experience had reached 3.5 billion again. This speed of increase was simply terrifying. From this, it could be seen just how terrifying the life force in the lake was. There was also that silver-haired woman. Her strength was simply too terrifying. She was much stronger than Di Tian. Lin Feng even felt that she might be a million-year divine beast. This meant that the silver-haired woman was like him. She was also an existence that had broken the rules. After all, everyone knew that soul beasts had no hope of breaking through to rank 100 unless they transformed into human form. And that silver-haired woman was definitely not human. Therefore, Lin Feng was a little shocked by this. This was also because Lin Feng didn't know that the God Realm had imposed divine punishment on all beasts for their cultivation. Otherwise, he would be even more shocked. Of course, this was all for later. At this moment, Lin Feng still had to pay attention to his martial soul, the immeasurable flower. There was a small bracket behind it, and there were 3 words in it: evolvable. This was the first time Lin Feng had seen this thing. He moved his consciousness up and quickly understood the specific meaning behind it. His immeasurable flower had absorbed enough life force that could evolve. Now, he could choose whether to evolve or not. Regarding this, Lin Feng didn't think too much and directly chose to evolve. And the moment Lin Feng made this choice, the immeasurable flower in his body instantly blossomed with a 9-colored light. The 7 colors of the rainbow, in addition to the pure black and white, the 9-colored light bloomed from Lin Feng's body. It even illuminated his entire body. This was only on the surface. Deeper inside, Lin Feng's immeasurable flower began to rapidly change among the 9 colors. Endless energy rippled within. Within a 10-meter radius around Lin Feng, life force was incomparably dense. Grass, small flowers, and so on began to grow crazily. There was even a sapling the size of a cup that grew to a height of tens of meters in just a few seconds. The tree trunk became thicker than a large water tank. The branches even crossed the courtyard and directly scattered outside. When the people around the courtyard saw this scene, they were all amazed. Although Great Xia City was the place with the most miracles in the entire continent, a tree like today was growing rapidly in front of your eyes. This scene still made everyone incomparably shocked. They all gathered around and watched curiously. And in the courtyard, Lin Feng already didn't have time to care about the situation outside. He was using all the energy in his body to try his best to prevent the fluctuations of soul power from spreading out. After all, the fluctuations of a martial soul's evolution were too strong. If it weren't for Lin Feng trying his best to stop it, the life force would probably spread to half of the city. Don't think that the spreading of life force was a good thing. At this moment, the martial soul was evolving. Lin Feng didn't have the slightest guarantee of the safety of this life force. If anything happened, half of the city would die. And if the life force was too strong, the flowers and trees in Great Xia City would probably grow crazily. Once this life force was released, half of the city would probably become a forest. This was too dangerous for the city. Furthermore, the follow-up maintenance costs would be extremely high. Most importantly, such a big accident had happened in the city today. What about in the future? What if there was another accident? Therefore, this kind of incident couldn't have too big of an impact. Otherwise, it would have a huge impact on Great Xia City's reputation. In the courtyard, the 9-colored light in Lin Feng's body alternated rapidly. As time passed, it was already reaching its limit. Suddenly, the 9-colored light disappeared, and the immeasurable flower returned to its original pure white color. At this moment, the energy fluctuations had already stopped. Lin Feng subconsciously summoned the immeasurable flower. Just this? Just this? Looking at the martial soul that was exactly the same as before, Lin Feng felt a little confused. Is this really what a martial soul looks like after evolution? Why is there no difference? Just as Lin Feng was puzzled, the immeasurable flower in his hand suddenly spun and gradually began to flicker with 9-colored light. It looked just like the 7-colored lotus in the Calabash Brothers. At this moment, the immeasurable flower had 9 petals. As the 9-colored light flickered, the originally snow-white petals gradually turned into 9 different colors. On it, life force, destruction, scorching heat, hallucination, and so on. All kinds of energy flickered on it, as if it was chaos. Is this what my martial soul looks like after evolution? Ding! The host's immeasurable flower martial soul has absorbed a huge amount of life force and evolved into the 9-colored chaos flower. Indeed, it was the same as what Lin Feng felt. His martial soul was now filled with the power of chaos and was extremely powerful. In fact, before this, Lin Feng didn't know what chaos was at all. However, from the moment he saw the 9-colored chaos flower, he understood what chaos was. Lin Feng could feel that his current strength was extremely powerful and was at least 30% stronger than before. Moreover, this increased ratio was purely calculated from his own energy. As for the power of chaos in his martial soul, Lin Feng hadn't tested the power of this thing, so he didn't know at this time. Only after a special test would he know his true strength. However, a rough guess would be that Lin Feng's overall strength had increased by at least 3 times. The reason for such a huge increase wasn't just because of the life force. After all, since Lin Feng grew up, his soul rings, soul bones, and even his martial soul had been greatly strengthened. These quantitative changes gathered together and happened to meet a large amount of life force, so there was a qualitative change at this time. At this moment, after the evolution of his martial soul, Lin Feng didn't stay in the courtyard for long. With a wave of his hand, the big tree in the courtyard returned to its original state. At the same time, the surrounding flowers and plants also returned to their original state. This ability was called Life Plunder. In the past, Lin Feng also knew it, but it wasn't his own ability. It was learned from other people's soul skills, so it wasn't as smooth. Now, this ability was subconsciously used by Lin Feng, so it should be the ability of his martial soul after its evolution. After discovering this, Lin Feng was instantly looking forward to the ability of his martial soul. He really wanted to know what other abilities his martial soul had. With this curiosity, Lin Feng didn't rush towards the Great Xia Palace. Instead, he flew out of the city. Not long after, Lin Feng arrived in a small forest near the Great Xia Palace. Immediately after, he began to experiment with his martial soul. This feeling was just like when he was training in the Holy Soul Village. He was full of curiosity about everything. After an hour, Lin Feng's face was full of astonishment. This was because he discovered that the 9-colored chaos flower's martial soul was much stronger than before. It actually had 10 completely different abilities. 9 of them were space, life, destruction, lightning, wind, fire, water, darkness, and light. Other than that, there was a combination of 9 powers. It was extremely powerful, and Lin Feng called it chaotic force. When these powers were combined, it actually gave Lin Feng the feeling of controlling the world. Of course, it was also because this power was too powerful that Lin Feng still had very little control over it. He needed to spend a lot of time practicing before he could master it. Lin Feng had a feeling that if he could completely master this power one day, it would be possible for him to open up a new world. After all, this was an extremely powerful chaotic force. It represented almost everything in the world. That's right, other than the 9-colored chaos flower's power, Lin Feng also discovered that his chaotic force could be attached to other objects, just like the 1,000 Trickery Ruler soul skill. Just now, Lin Feng had turned the 1,000 Trickery Ruler into a long sword and attached the chaotic force to it. Then he slashed down, whoosh, as a sword light flashed. A small mountain more than 50 meters tall was directly cut in half by Lin Feng's sword. At this moment, looking at the smooth surface in front of him, Lin Feng was so shocked that he was speechless for a long time. This is too strong. Lin Feng knew that the chaotic force was powerful, but this was still beyond his comprehension. After all, this was a small mountain. If this situation was seen by the soul masters on the Douluo continent, they would probably call it a miracle. Not to mention others, even the peak divine officials of the God world, the 2 siblings by Luo and by Shui, could not do this. Even the Silver Dragon King, Gu Yuna, could not cut this small mountain in half. The shock was short-lived. Soon, Lin Feng calmed down and returned to Grand Xia City. The evolution of his martial soul had greatly increased Lin Feng's strength, but he was still far from reaching his peak. He needed a long time of practice. When he was familiar with the chaotic force, that would be Lin Feng's peak. During this period, the most important task was to cooperate with the Soul Beast Alliance and deify himself. Thinking of this, Lin Feng went straight to Grand Xia Palace to start today's important meeting. At this moment, Tang San had been waiting for a long time.